have
separate.
95%.
You can't live in a
tap
perfect
water.
world.
We're talking about brainwashing, right? This is the 5% of not.
I get your point, and I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it's too purist to survive.
Too purist.
All right, I'm getting confused about who's talking. And are you suggesting that I'm sullying science by making fun of Gwyneth Paltrow? Because Gwyneth Paltrow does not equal science in any stretch of the imagination. So I don't know why that's got anything to do with anything.
I don't know. She's really close to Tony Stark. So. And
yes, Pepper Potts' opinions on psychics and vampires and things
are perfectly valid. Pepper Potts' opinions.
Conspiracy theories, they're perfect.
That's true.
Because reasons.
Because reasons.
Yes, because that's true.
Oh, that's good.
I mean, listen, I'm not suggesting psychic vampires aren't real, because psychic vampires are certainly real.
Oh, yes, exactly.
It's certainly a real thing. But the idea that this oil is going to repel them.
Yes, that's not true.
Probably a bad idea.
That's what I was laughing, because I thought, well, that's silly because it doesn't repel. It takes way more than that. It's a psychic thing. So you need to do something at a psychic level, not just a garlic. Well, if it's garlic and rose, yeah.
I'm pretty sure a shirt that says 3C405 representing Cygnus A, massive radio galaxy, is better at repelling psychic vampires than.
I think that all you need
just
people
stay away
to
from
do
people.
is say I don't agree with that, and I don't let them. They're not allowed in my space. I think that's all it takes.
Yeah, that you go.
You don't need to be making money out of that. But anyways, that's just my opinion.
I mean, psychic vampires certainly are real, but I just don't think this is particularly effective repellent. Like, effective repellent is like good driving procedures. That's a good bit of learning how to drive a car where your strategy does not devolve into tactics. Right?
So welcome everyone. This is it's good to have you here. Daniel is driving today. We're talking about conspiracy theories and conspiracy theory land. We made up a list and we were going through them, and we realized that we couldn't even stop. I mean, the moment we started talking about them, he goes, "Let's get on and start talking about a list." It was like, oh my God! So we had so much as usual. So obviously, Duff, James, Chris Kelly, of course, being here. Chris from Taste Back Space. We have, of course, Tess, Rick, and Daniel. Well, of course, myself.
Where's Robert? He was here a minute ago.
Well, I don't see him on the little ball, like the little circles at the top.
He
so
popped in and popped out.
Well, he'll probably be back. I mean, he does have like kids and wife and stuff.
Legit. Totally legit.
Welcome everybody. Hi viewers. I exist.
I exist. So what was number one on the list? I think that obviously lizard people was up there, but what we're going to try to do today, folks, to keep you all straight, is we're going to basically not really debunk these things scientifically, but more related to how it's going to go, I guess, how it affects the people, and what is the conspiracy thing related to the actual thing? Am I right on that, Duff? Is that the goal?
I think so.
I think
absolutely.
Okay. That was a bad intro, but that's what's happening. So.
No, it's good.
It's a functional intro.
It's functional. Okay. So so the first we basically we're even trying to debate. I guess you just walked in while we were bashing Gwyneth Paltrow. So, and she's a really good singer. I like her and Huey Lewis in the News. I have a song called "Cruising in the Car," like literally.
All right, I did not bash Gwyneth Paltrow.
No, you did. I'm sorry.
Not bash Gwyneth Paltrow.
Duff said, and that's the way it is now. It's just what it is.
No, I suggested psychic vampire repellent is not effective.
Wow.
There's a difference.
But it has love in it, so
I don't even understand. So is that her bathwater or something?
Love, Daniel?
What's going on here?
You hate love.
I even have it in my mission where love is included for unbelievers.
But
anyway,
not in your vampire spray though.
Here's the. This is not my vampire spray.
Sure?
Although if somebody would like to purchase some, I'll get an address for you.
Oh, you're doing some promo for her. Okay.
Psychic
Yeah.
$27. Here's the ingredients.
Order
Why don't you
now.
just make your own and sell
Do you
your
own
own?
stock in the vampire repellent?
There is
Exactly.
bloodstone, sound waves, moonlight, love, and grain alcohol. I don't know if that
Nice.
sweetens the deal or not.
That
That's-
does
that's the
sweeten the
love
deal.
part.
That's the love part. Yeah, for sure. Now, actually, this is a good one to start with.
okay.
Then this is a good one to start with. The New Age aspects of stuff that has been that was used in the prior eras, for example,
Mhm.
crystals, and what they were used for in ancient or like super ancient megalithic times. And now, of course, today we do know that these things have electrical properties. We use them for sonar dishes, telephones, everything else. But now here we are looking at this, and clearly this has gone off the science rails into this kind of area, which it started off as probably a real thing, at least something an apothecary might have way back when, if that makes sense.
Well, and I think these ancient poultices and oils and things did have medicinal purposes, but there have always been the liars who stood next to the truth tellers. The truth is that we have to discern. Nobody has all of the truth, and nobody tells all of the lies. It's always necessary to discern the difference between the two. And this is as we move into a new truth-free, era. We're going to have to be. We're going to have to be even more discerning, and I think that this episode really, to me, is about having some fun first, but also polishing our discernment skills.
Well, you're
I
right.
I have a question regarding the crystals for you guys, because my sister was always into healing with crystals, and she knows a lot of alternative medicine, and some things is definitely like herbology, like curing with herbs and plants, which
Right.
is totally valid, and Reiki, which some people consider to be valid as well. Ramon would say that it's definitely, he can see it. And
He'd be
people
for
that
it.
have a biofield viewer
Right.
now can actually see the energy. I don't know what exactly, if it's just the biofield or what it is. But I had a question for you for talking about crystals. They say that it holds memory like water, and I know they use it, like you said, in computers, and there's something special about them. So what do you think about that? The memory and water. And you've seen Masaru Emoto's experiments with the frozen water, right? And the snowflakes, depending on putting using words or music, having the water, the frequency of music changes the crystals.
Based on emotion tests.
Mm-hmm. Do you know anything about crystals compared to water regarding that scientifically, that you could say, yes, there's that, or no, there's nothing, that you just curious?
Actually,
You're scientific.
I'm very curious about it. In fact, I would have to agree that there's something to it. That right there is the video of the water documentary or whatever.
Yeah.
And they were talking about water has memory type of thing. I'm not expecting you to play that or anything. It was just an idea. And also, it doesn't seem to be completely ground out even on Wikipedia. And that's saying something. Just looking at it.
Can I take a crack at it?
Hang on, I apologize.
No.
I can't get to the mute button. There we go.
Don't worry, we can't hear anything. It's not coming through. So yeah.
We don't want to get you back. We don't want to get you copyrighted or anything like that. So
it happened last time with the Mad Max. I was just sitting there talking and yakking, and then suddenly Mad Max came on, and it was like, oh no, Jesus! And it was 15 seconds. But
I think I'm actually. It's 15 seconds. I thought it was 8 seconds.
Well, no, that's how long it was on the screen for. Like before I got nailed.
Yeah, your fair use will give you about 8 seconds. I mean, as long now you can sit there and have a small image of it in the screen the whole time, as long as you're going to like pause it and critique it or talk
Yes,
over it
and
or something.
keep jumping through. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. But you can play 8 solid seconds at a time. Water memory. I think I might have seen this one myself. Let me see if I can.
But yeah, and there was that other one. I thought that was a really cute one with that was like only 4 minutes long. I just typed in water has memory, and it was the one that I was looking for.
Yeah,
it seems to do something. Something happens there with it. It's up for theories as to why or how it happens, but it clearly happens.
Here's the 2 minute one right here. I think
but
I got
that's
the
not
right
really
guy.
a conspiracy. Is it really a conspiracy? No, that's a good thing, right? This is not
just an observation of nature, I think.
Yeah, this is just. I think this is kind of cool, actually. The crystal thing with Queeneth.
This is definitely not people conspiring to come up with this one.
And there's the thing,
humanity, that's for sure.
I mean, admittedly, though, there are a bunch of people who are trying to sell this whole, they're using people's ignorance is one thing, is the whole water thing, is the whole, no, this is fresh bio water that we leave outside all year long, and that green film is really good for you. Can
I suggest something realistic about this all, since I'm here? I mean,
yes, please do.
Yeah. So to Tessa's question, it's very likely that information is stored in plasma layers. Like every single second or parsec of time is basically a thin layer of plasma that emanates from every single dot, body, cosmos in the universe. So what information is that it's a plasma formation in a shell. With a fall off, right? And then there's an immediate flip, like the pole reversals that they're noticing with the Parker probe right now is that shells are basically hitting a gradient fall off maximum and then flipping to null. And so I think that what happens is when you focus on water, because we are emanating these same kind of plasma frequencies, then these shells get intermingled and you can absolutely change formation of things. It's very, very low level transmogrification with the mind. But the fact that this is not pseudoscience, this is 100% real science proven by Eileen McCusick and Rupert Sheldrake and Gerald Pollack, like beyond a shadow of a doubt, 100% reality, in my opinion.
Neil, can I?
But started out as a wild theory.
It did. It did. But that's why sometimes it's good to explore these things. Like we would laugh at this, not. I don't know, not 30 years ago. We'd say this is ludicrous. And now this is understood in the sense that we can store, some information is being held, not just through the work of Gerald Pollack, but also, as you said, with the layers. One of the things that, now I'm not sure about this, but the idea of being able to induce or otherwise put the frequency of a chemical into the water, because a lot of people are wondering, how does
it's the geometric lattice, right? Crystals have lattice structures which are hexagonal, dodecahedral. Look at in front of you; these are all basically the same emanations of spheres meeting boundary points and pinches. And they pinch in the same. They have a same rule set, right? That's why they are iterative of the same geometry, but it's the same geometric rules of plasma throughout the universe. Everything looks just like this, including our nerves and our hands. Look at your hand. Everybody's got basically the kind of double layer imprinted on their palm. This is the true nature of it. That's why we of course we can affect water, and of course crystals, which are resonant, can sympathetically resonate with our plasma layer when we focus on it, because we're sending out a pulse and it's returning a pulse. Everything exists in a paradigm of the dipole. There's nothing in isolation, and this is proven countless times. If you really press the Thunderbolts project, guys, this is what it will come down to, or I bet.
Yeah, and Eileen was saying also that the crystal would amplify the effect of the fork. Remember? She was saying that if you put it at the
correct
and the other side between
she would be a guest on the show, man. Get her on the show.
Water is more special than we understand. The last 30 years of scientific endeavors to try and understand properties of water, it separates charge. I think it creates charge when it touches up against something as well.
Welcome to the December 15th edition of the Electric View. I'm Neil Thompson. Today we're going over the highlights of this year's best conspiracies related to the electric universe as a fun way of unwinding from what is arguably the best year yet for the electric paradigm, which seems to be confirmed every other day now. Please take a moment to like and subscribe.
What?
Well, I was just saying it comes when you drop a particle of matter into the water, that water takes on the properties of that particle.
Oh, homeopathy?
And homeopathy, that's the one.
Yes.
That's the one.
Homeopathy.
So water is more special than we even understand. We say that water gives life. That's more true than anyone understands, really, truly.
But isn't it just saying we didn't understand, but now we do? As opposed to saying we don't, like this general ethos of like, we can never understand, but our bodies are made of water. Like it's 100% accurate, like 1-to-1. There's almost no nebulosity to it.
Right, and I forgot water carries genetic memory as well.
Right,
So,
planets are water space, like forms of these dipoles forming, connections in
Well,
space.
and that's why when we listen to planets, they sound different.
Sure.
So because we are hearing those interactions, and you're right, there is a resonance. Each cell in our body has that. One of the questions I was about to raise before was what happens, like, for example, adrenaline seems to enter into our bloodstream and affect the tip of our finger in less than a split second. But that can't be, it's no way that it could have possibly left the little thing on the side of our heart and get down to the end of our finger in a second. So it wasn't actually the adrenaline itself is doing it, but the adrenaline signal when it hit the bloodstream carry instantly. Now that's very interesting.
It's fields, right? Like it's the same. It's the same thing with the speed of light, right? They can't figure out how. There's a speed limit and light travels versus
spooky action at a distance.
Exactly.
Well, one of the theories was simply with regards to the water idea that, well, if we can put a drug into a cup of water, let's say an aspirin, and we drink the water, then we take most of the aspirin out. How much do we?
No, the thing is, you only need a particle of that aspirin to make that happen. That's the thing.
And can we broadcast that across the internet so that someone else could dip their piece of metal into the water, and now the water will have the same effect as if it had aspirin in it? That's the kind of stuff I want to see, because I would really like I would like to download drugs right now.
Mind blown. Mind blown.
I don't mean it like in a severe crazy way, but when you think about it, wouldn't it be great if it's like think about, people were talking about 3D printing something and going, well, if you allow them to 3D print their own computers and their own guns and their own whatever, why would they need us? And now you're at a point where you don't understand.
It's like, yeah, that is the point.
Do you have
understand.
Do you have this really good marijuana? Okay, if you have this really good strain of marijuana, would you like to taste it? Just download this patch, stick this thing into your cup of water, and drink it, and you'll experience it. Like that would be
because it's all
messed up.
It's all frequency and vibration-y.
Like that's what I mean. That's the type of stuff I'd like to research. It doesn't mean it's true, guys.
Wow.
But you know what I mean.
That would be amazing if it could come to fruition. Wow.
Yeah, I just remembered. Have you seen those experiments where they put a rose or a petal of a rose in water? Actually,
that's the other video I have.
And then they take it on the microscope, and they have the pattern of the petal everywhere in the water.
That last picture, that last link has that in
it. Scientific.
That video.
Because it's a magnitude higher in complexity of the fractal. That's what like
Yeah, exactly.
plants are, everything
Bottom one.
essentially root is plasma, and then you probably have water on top of that, this kind of slightly more complex version of it, and then you have more and more complexity. That's why our lives seem so separate from the animals, but we're exactly like them. We're exactly like plants and inanimate objects, but different magnitudes. And then awareness is due to the charge of the magnitude with a fall off. And it makes like so much sense as we move and grow plasma layers, everything is like kind of pushing and squeezing into one another, creating more of these structures, more dense, more knowledge. I would argue that that the human race is smarter than it's ever been, but maybe there are more people, so there are more dumb people than ever before.
Certainly.
Or not dumb. I mean,
Absolutely.
I take that back. People who can't grasp the threads as well as the leadership nodal point. Like you have to have
intelligence is just a part of a spectrum. In order to have great intelligence, you have to have stupidity.
But just the trunk of a tree, right? Like, what is the tip versus the
just the tip?
There's just the tip. No, but there's thrusting, right? Like, I know this is going to sound really sexual, but it's not. It's really just about like there has to be a vector like leader, right? And there has to be the rest of it kind of pushing this vector forward. So it's not like I just don't believe that like 100% of people can be smart, and I don't think there are 100% dumb people, right? Like it has.
Yeah.
Right. So, anyway, that's my point.
No,
I think per capita ignorance has gone down as a result of the internet, largely. I mean, there's no doubt per capita ignorance has gone down because anybody in a third world nation can go buy a $30 smartphone and have access to practically all of the information ever known by all of mankind.
Here's the thing, though. You can't look at
it could be bad too.
You can't look at ignorance as a thing to be stomped out. You have to look at the root of all knowledge. Have to look at ignorance as a thing to be as a step in a continuum. There are shit tons of things that I am ignorant about all the time, and I'm constantly seeking knowledge, constantly. And if it weren't for my understanding of my own ignorance, I would have nothing to compare it to when I get it. Like I think we have to understand conspiracy theories and ignorance and lies and deceptions. This is fertile ground from which the truth grows. And
I'm saying it's necessitative.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not disagreeing with you personally. I'm just telling you what I think. The bottom line is that these lies and deceptions are fertile ground from which the truth sprouts. All of these things, crystals, for example, for years and years and years, I thought people who talked about crystals were full of shit. And now I'm much more likely to believe that there's truth in the power of crystals. I'm still out. The verdict is still out with me. I'm still, kind of considering these ideas. But the point is that my own ignorance often turns into what I believe to be intelligence or truth. And oftentimes things I thought were true, I realize ultimately where I was ignorant about.
You got to be discerning,
there's a fluidity and a continuum to the intelligence of humanity, and the individual intelligence of people exists on a scale at any given moment throughout our lives. And so I think that we can't rule out people who are wrong. We can't rule out people who are stupid. We can't rule out, because I worked with disabled people in my 30s and into my 40s. And some of the most wise, poignant, most moving things I've ever heard come out of human beings' mouth came from people who had Down syndrome or who had a traumatic brain injury. There is wisdom in ignorance. There is fertility. There is fertility in deception, and there is truth in lies. And that is what we have to understand as we go forward. That these conspiracy theories are deceptions, and they're intentional deceptions by evil overlords who want to keep us from the truth. But they're also just steps along the path to a greater understanding of the way the world works. If you told me 20 years ago that water holds information, I would have told you you're fucking crazy. Excuse me for saying that.
Yeah, I
agree. But 20 years ago, I'd still be okay because Laserdiscs and DVDs. But
that's because you're smart.
Look, although
maybe I don't want to go that far.
Elegant Universe, I watched What the Bleep Do We here? You guys might relate to this. But Elegant Universe, What the Bleep Do We Know? Mm-hmm. Right around 98, 99.
Yeah.
I mean, the entire stuff like I'm talking about now that I know now is true physically was completely quantifiable at that point. They were saying exactly this. but they were saying it in this kind of really like, at some point in the future we'll finally figure it out. But that actually was already figured out 100 and some odd or thousands of years ago. And really the powers that be that use this knowledge keep throwing it in our faces. It's more about, like, what I'm saying is like ascension, for example. You wrote this, but like, we are already God.
Look at The Secret. I mean, people are hungry for this.
Right. I think what I was talking about, yeah. So I agree with Mike, but Michael, I was saying I agree with you, but I think we as a natural organism, the universe, pose these obstacles for ourselves in order to grow. The evil overlords are also us.
We should also take a point just to
sorry.
No, before we go into the next one, because we're going to have to, obviously, we're leaving this subject and probably going to go into another one here. But one of the things that I wanted to...
I was just going to...
No, let me finish.
Sorry, I was just going to carry... Go ahead, Neil. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I was just going to say that we should be aware of that a lot of the stuff that we've talked about has gone all the way back from like Aristotle, all the way up through Voltaire, Lichtenstein, all of them, till we get to here. And that's where physics was born from, this type of arguing about what is reality. So this is, I mean, this is literally the conversation. The trouble is that there's a lot of rigidity and rules that have been hammered down that we don't realize that we might have hamstrung ourselves in a way. And that's what it seems to me. I don't want to say screwed up all of reality as much as I would like to be very, 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 very mean to Eddington if he was alive. But besides that, we're really just trying to do what we think is right using the rules that we've thought that we have nailed down. But if you're starting to change constants, no one's ready for that. No one is ready to say, yeah, constants, oh yeah, there's a variable that controls it like a switch in the background. You just sort of turn the knob. Like, no one would believe that.
Carbon dioxide, man.
Well, I guess in some cases they do believe that, but that's more of an amplification idea. But that's still, again, born of something really, really ridiculous. Just because we thought that there was going to be trees when we got to Venus, they landed on it and went, there ain't no trees here. We're all going to die. And that's how hot it was. And that's what it was. And, you know, and then they said, well, how'd it get so hot? And then Carl Sagan pulled that right out of his butt and said, oh, well, it must be greenhouse gases. It created a greenhouse effect, and that's what's going on here. And we just picked that up, carbon copied it, no pun intended, and put it on Earth, and there we go. Now that 30 years later, we're dealing with the same thing. Now that's why I have strong misgivings regarding the quality of that science. But it is what people around the world think right now. So it's not exactly something I want to go and make us look like we need to go fight, because a lot of this is what we're talking about: imaging, like David Icke using lizard people, like, and then saying, oh, and Saturn. Here's a bunch of cool Saturn stuff from the Thunderbolts project. It would like, oh my God, don't put those together.
you know, though, like, it's like a good song, right? This whole concept of plasma cosmology interconnectivity is so appealing to those who care that it doesn't matter how tainted it gets. Ultimately it's going to get as tainted as possible, because everybody wants to get on board the new hot thing. And this is the new hot thing, but there's nothing past this. It's either we're all connected or we're islands, in which case, like, either way, it doesn't matter, right?
Well, there's
so speaking of, can we move to the... sorry.
No, you're right. I was about to say... I was about to give a hat tip to.
Good segue.
I was going to give a hat tap to James, who would go something about materialism right now, and then, but stepping off then into Rick had something to say, but I would like to change the subject to the next topic, and if there are ones in the that you happen to see that are coming through the chat.
Hold on, let me interrupt you, Neil.
Sure.
I have to pass the baton of screen sharing, but first I want to show you just a little clip from the History of the Gaseous Sun by Sky Scholar here, Dr. Robitaille.
Right.
Which is talking about some of the first theories of what was going on with the solar atmosphere, right? So here's a little teaser, and I didn't really vet this. I just put it to where I thought it would be appropriate. I'll play you about 8 seconds of this. Herschel's sun here. And by the way, those little green things, those are the solarites, or whatever they were referred to as dudes back in the 1860s and such thought that when you saw through a sunspot, you were seeing through clouds in an atmosphere similar to the Earth's. And I'm not suggesting you're not or that you are, but here's a clip. Here's a clip of the thing.
I like that.
I highly recommend everybody watch this one, because if you're not aware of how we came up with the idea that there's a fusion hydrogen dynamo inside of the sun, which is responsible for things like its spectra, you should probably watch this video. Anyway, here's a clip. I have no idea what he's going to say here, but Robitaille is not known for saying stupid things. He's kind of like the Jordan Peterson of astrophysics.
Plus, we can't actually hear him, so put the CC on.
I hate Jordan Peterson. I'm just saying it. Putting it out there.
I totally agree, Mike.
Anyways, was that too loud? I don't know.
Unfortunately, there was no sound coming through. That's why I said hit the CC button. We can actually read it. There's no sound. You don't have your sound shared. So
right on.
That's okay, though.
Oh, geez. It's only sharing through the mic. That's weird, though, but it's coming through my speakers. All right, yeah.
It'll do that, yes, but you have to actually hit the little button to share. But we will read this, yeah.
Solarians.
Oh,
there you go.
I love Solarians. That's my favorite Doctor Who villain.
Solarians were those were the beings that lived there on the surface of the sun, as Herschel's model predicts.
Now I know where they got the name.
Anyway, everybody watch the video. It's I think it's actually the first video on Sky Scholar. I think it's the oldest one. History of the Gaseous Sun.
It's a good history to go over. A lot of people don't know how, like we realized there were problems way back then with this mass problem, because we said gas giants. I mean, these were gas giants. They had to be. They're so big, and they're so light. And the same with the sun. It's so big. It's so light.
Or is it?
No, well, it doesn't. Anyway, I don't know. We don't know.
Get into that. I have to pass the screen sharing baton on. So
all good.
Let me unshare, and thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks viewers, everybody. Cheers, and look to hear from us soon. I'll watch the part that I miss.
Yeah, I think you gotta take off.
Yep, I gotta head out. So
no problem, dude.
If I could only find the correct thing to stop screen sharing, that would just be perfect. But
that's okay. I'll steal it from you, just like that.
Oh, can you? All right,
boom.
Perfect, man.
And now I'm
Daniel. Thank you, and I'd love to discuss Gwyneth Paltrow at some point. Let's get some.
I would not.
I would not.
Let's combine the pepper and the pot, and
I'll bring the salt. I'll bring the salt.
I'll bring the wounds.
Okay, now let's talk aliens now.
Let's talk aliens now. Speaking of bad things,
just be stranger.
They're back.
I need a wig like that guy, like what's his name there? That guy Geraldo from the Ancient Aliens with the hair.
Giorgio Tsoukalos.
Yes, that's his name. There we go.
That's funny. No, well, yeah, this is even worse because okay, so yeah, it seems like the new 2012 is back. Now it's the new 2019.
Right.
Rewind into 2012 scenario, and the problem is that they are
same old snake oil.
Yeah, they're mixing the cool electric universe, plasma universe information with really crazy stuff. Like it's like evangelical, like taken out from the Bible. Evangelical rapture, mass ascension, which, yes, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. And the reptilians, of course, that's another thing. And the Galactic Federation, or the people that are going to come and save the good people that have decided to be good, and they're probably going to be like raptured or taken up in the spaceship or somehow. And then they're mixing, they're
and
mixing,
then they're drinking Kool-Aid. I saw that.
Yeah, and then they're mixing the good information there of the electric universe, including Thornhill name and his name and other people. So maybe you just wanted to see what they're saying. Maybe I should say what they're saying, and then we can go from there and try to separate the the good stuff from the silly stuff, in case people go and hear this or see it, or if they come across anyone that is asking. So it's micronovas from our sun, and radiation and polar I guess it's magnetic, of course, magnetic pole reversal causing problems, and the weakening of the magnetic field. So they're mixing all that up with the mass ascension and the end times, that it's upcoming pretty much soon. And so there's like a religion, I think, that they're kind of trying to create, like a new age kind of thing. And
well, that's the sort of the 1960s age of Aquarius type of idea. We're changing the age.
Yeah, it's been going on.
There is some truth to that, because we left we did have symbols for each of them, and we did live in the age of Taurus, then went to the age of Aries, and the age of Pisces, and now the age of Aquarius. So I do understand that this is happening. It's just very like they ascribe a lot of significance. It's like there are a lot of people around the world that seem to really, really think that this stuff is truly important. Like, I mean, because don't get me wrong, we can understand why. Looking at what the history you talk about these massive traumas, these people are trying to preserve something, and they think it is, literally world ending if we don't.
Before I forget this, because I'm pretty chill right now, I just want to suggest something. When you're in a war zone, there's this element of the end of normalcy. So reality as we know it, this boring, mundane, banal, like repetitive cycle of life, will suddenly be halted by the imminent threat of war. It's a true and terrible thing that actually happens. But countries, especially like right now in the world where there's a lot of prosperity, even though there's a lot of tragedy as well, prosperous countries kind of almost lust for this ending of normalcy through imminent threat. So I think the seductiveness of these documentaries,
I think aliens are like
end of salvationism and the end of, it's not even salvation, it's the end of times, is so compelling to people who have it really good, essentially. And
really? I don't understand the rapture. I really don't.
Because being wrapped, this is philosophical, but Alan Watts does a really great idea of wrapped. He's like, being raptured is to wrap the film, is to be done. Is people who just want to end it. It's actually suicidal thinking. In a way, it's this odd kind of fascination with death because of life. I actually think, that's sort of
ultimate comeuppance.
Well, why is it so seductive?
Mm-hmm.
For me, now that I've found Electric Universe, I found really the empowerment that I was looking for. Now I actually look forward to death as a physical process, versus looking at death as this thing that's like, I don't know, it's going to be so exciting when all this normal shit ends, because it's so terrible. It's the terrible now, grass is greener concept applied to I don't know, religious beliefs, spiritual beliefs.
It is such a big difference from 1980. Like in 1980, you were like, no, we can do anything. Our brains will solve everything, and we are the smartest things that ever. We're gonna take care of this problem. We got it going on.
Well,
I used to think that you get into computers because you're smart, not because you're lazy. If you get my meaning, like it was hard.
But there's fall off with everything, right?
Of course.
Leadership,
totally.
the page and the words, the 90%, 10% paradigm. So lots of people got into computers and created all the music and all the archives and the internet and all this shit. And then a whole bunch of other people consumed it. And it's necessitative reciprocity.
What were you going to say,
I'd just like to say what I think about this subject is that the conspiracy theorists out there that either take on one subject or another They see the electric universe resonates with them, and they see when we say, or when somebody at the Thunderbolts Project say that everything is connected through electricity, it resonates with them, and it gives their theory a little bit more bite, a little bit more information to support it.
Well,
it may not be correct, but yeah.
Well, look at what's on the screen right now. We have David doing his thing, and just earlier he was talking about Saturn and like the images of Saturn, and now he's on to basically combining that into.
Let's disassemble him.
Yeah, well,
let's break down what people like about.
One sec, Chris.
No,
I just want to. The reason why he brings up Saturn is because he poo-poos against all the elites and the globalists, which rightly so.
It's right here on the screen, yeah.
Rightly so, and these elitists, they understand that Saturn was our ancient god, and they never stopped worshiping Saturn, but they gave everyone else a different story to control them, and that's the way it was, and that's the way it has been and is to this very day with organized religion. It needs to be maybe not stomped out, but it needs to make some drastic changes.
Well, I just know that I'm sick and tired.
Of the elites.
I'm sick and tired of dragging trees through my living room every year. Like, that's just got to stop. I have to draw the line.
Well, don't do it. Don't do it. Yeah, don't do it. Just let them grow.
Fight the pines.
Can I make a suggestion, Neil?
Lights on the tree outside.
A nice picture of a Christmas tree every Christmas. Just hang it up on the wall. And
I am totally just being silly. Don't worry about me. I'm just pointing out how that symbol is still done every year for everyone. Everyone worships Saturn every Christmas. We call him Santa. Yeah. He's big. He's red, and he has stripes on him that are white.
And Chris was ready to go with something. Did you forget your thought, or do you still got that going?
No, I was going to say, like, there are a lot of different ways to go here, but if we have David Icke up, he has a few points that are they're not easily debunkable. They're debunkable, but I think, generally speaking, all these conspiracies that include, the flower of life, the Taurus, the whodunit mentality, right? Because it's always like whodunit, and it's very.
Or what time did it happen?
Or what time? Actually, I think it's funny. Plasma cosmology and cosmogony is way more actually interested in history than our contemporary religious archaeologists who basically speculate.
They're trying to discredit because evidence comes up often. Like, I mean, there is this is what literally started me getting into the electric universe. There was a coffee table book by Reader's Digest. It was about a foot by a foot. Okay, it was a square book, and it was big, and it didn't fit on a shelf good. And then you opened it, and it was Mysteries of the Unexplained, which was a totally stupid name because it was basically saying, unexplained things about unexplained things. Really? That's mysterious.
And just like Squatterman was just found in Japan on the coast last year.
Anyway, the point was that these anomalies were like, a golden chain in a coal seam, a bell made of aluminum that's supposed to be hundreds of thousands of years old, all this kind of stuff, like enigmas and anomalies. And I just was blown away by the fact that there were so many of them. And just typing into Google, just typing in the words, like giants and bones and 1800s newspaper, and you'll get like literally thousands of hits. So I'm just saying that type of thing, history does conventional history seems to cover it up, where we're very interested in digging out those stories, like you were saying.
It's all in it. Kronos brings up a great point in the chat, and I agree with him entirely. He says the Christmas trees are recreations of the cosmic mountain,
yes.
And also with the menorah. But I would say further,
that's what mine is.
They're recreations because it's basically a tapered fall off of a centipedal tree-like structure.
Yeah, with a star at the top and little things swirling around it.
It's exactly the fundamental conjugate geometry. It's the same geometry of throughout the same. This is why, like, it's a chain of these along a Birkeland filament
I
creates
also
what
think
looks like
that
a
that's
centipede in a tree, but they taper as well. So you have
yes.
like compressions and rarefactions along the Birkeland filament, which look like a pointy tree or the Tower of Babel, the Cosmic Mountain, the menorah. As I said, it's not made by anybody on Earth. It's made by the universe at large in this fundamental geometric formation. And that's why things look and function the way they do. Similar with actually maybe the way we're thinking about it right now. Like this tiny little group is at the point, like the tip of a conical shape of a plasma formation of research, for example, or whatever. I'm losing the thread, but something like that. Like essentially, there's leadership of thought plasma bubbles, and this somewhere exists on the forefront of that leadership node.
Well, let's not
and
just
it's creating these
toot our horns,
waves.
though, but
Neil, you were referring to OPARTs, out of place
OPARTs,
artifacts.
yes. Yeah, that's what they're called. You're right. But you're right about the Christmas tree. In fact, one of the things that I think about the Christmas tree in this context, especially when we're talking about it, it might have been the origin of the idea of the soul, because of our because we would see things floating up it, like plasmoids and so forth, just like you would after lightning strikes and so forth. And these type of things it wouldn't, just like when you would imagine a big puff of ashes goes flying from a fire after you burnt Darth Vader or something, and then you go, oh, that was his spirit going. Well, I think that those are the type of things that really increased our spirituality and the idea of who we are, and that level of introspection coming from the sky itself. I mean, it did make us think about that. It was the first thing that made us think about that. The fact that
Can I say something about
of course,
the Christmas tree? Yeah, I think it also is from doing my research on the comets and the catastrophes of the last 1,000 years. I've been looking at a lot of information on the photos and the dates and the comets and all that. And I think it also looks like the comet, and I think the big comets, there are some comets that look just like the tail of Venus, and sometimes they're upside down, but sometimes they are just like that triangle, like the pyramid, and then the head of the comet would be the top. And then depending on the view of the angle of the comet and the way it was, or the planet, if it was Venus or Mars or a moon of Mars, or some comet that was close enough, if it had that angle, that just looks the same. And I'm like, oh, maybe that's what they were doing that symbol for. That symbol, it just was any planetary body will discharge the same, right? If it's a planet or a comet. So I'm thinking that that's what they kept seeing that, and maybe that's what they were reusing this motif. In 1744, if you look at that, I have that video out already. There is a comet that looked just like the Tanit symbol, or the what you could call the Cosmic Mountain, with this round thing and the triangle,
right here.
But it was just upside down.
Right here.
Yeah. Exactly. Look at it. And that even looks like...
There's only so many comets in 1744, so it wasn't hard to find.
Yes.
Don't think I'm special.
Thank you. I mean, look at that. Look how big that is. Look at the city. Look at the mountain. That thing is gigantor. And also look at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, this one could also be like the 6-headed serpents.
You're correct. Yes,
the Nagas,
exactly. Yeah, right.
And the Buddhas. That's what they were seeing, and this was just like a minor compared to probably what it was pretty huge.
Venus was
but look at that.
Something like that.
Well, the birth of Venus standing in her shell, that was the big one. That was the very biggest one that we saw.
There you go.
There's your feathers, by the way.
Yeah, Rick.
So,
there you go.
Tess, I have a question for you, Tess.
Yes.
So, if you lived on another continent at that time in history, and you got word, say, a year later that this event happened, would you think that maybe that would be someone telling you a conspiracy theory? Like it was maybe made up, like it wouldn't be believed because it were so fantastical?
Look at that one.
Well, I think these ones were seen all over the world. I think they were saying it like this type of comet. It was going. I think that everyone saw it. It was just different.
Yeah, I have
look
no
at that!
doubt
Look at that!
seeing is believing,
so,
but if you didn't see
What,
it,
this
look at that
live somewhere
spiral
far
right
away.
there.
This one?
Did you see that spiral right there?
I would
I'm sorry.
argue like you couldn't miss it, right, Tess?
Yes. No, you couldn't miss this one. They said that some of these comets, the tail after, well, they could be seen in the daylight. Look at that spiral right there in the middle. Look at that comet. What's the spiral? That's the spiral that it's in all the petroglyphs. They're all comets, like discharging like comets that everyone discharges. And that's why the people keep repeating those everywhere. And the hand, the Hindu hand.
Oh,
but
yes,
what I was going to say is that some of
Buddha's
these comets,
palm.
some of the ones that I've been looking at and researching and seeing the descriptions of the astronomers that were looking at them, they said that after the comet, the head of the comet was gone above the horizon, they saw the tail. Look, that's stop right there. Look at the Aten. The Aten symbol is the same thing, and that was Venus. The Aten, the Egyptian Aten. But anyways,
no, I didn't know
Let
where
me
you wanted to
ask
stop.
the tail of the comet was seen all through the night. They saw it the whole night.
Well, because
going. It was so long.
well, remember, it's going to be in the once it starts discharging. Usually, you start getting closer and closer to the sun. So the orbit would eventually be on the inside of us, like Venus's is. So we can only see it at morning or night, because we obviously or morning or evening, because we have to use the sun or the Earth to block the sun, so we can see the Venus, or
Yeah. So anyway, so I was just going to say that I've seen this symbol, and I'm like, oh, maybe that's what they were doing it. So, but yeah, look at there's some amazing photos there. But yes, I'm going to be
plasma discharges very similar on different scales, right? So
I was going to say it's the peacock feathers, the NBC logo.
Peacock feathers.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
well, Venus de Milo, that
go.
is the same symbol, the peacock feathers. In fact, that's why the peacock was probably such a sought-after animal.
Actually, did you say Venus de Milo? That's so funny that you said that. Yeah, there's a painting, right, where
Her shell.
Venus is actually, her shell is
Right here.
exactly this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even the eye, the all-seeing eye, there was a comet that looked just like the all-seeing eye, like the triangle of the church with the eye.
There you go. Well, yeah.
Michelangelo drew that and painted that on the descriptions of the ancient Greeks.
Mm-hmm.
From the descriptions, from writing, he drew this at 1400 or what? Yeah, he was around at 1400 or something like that. Yeah, so this is stuff that is genetic memory, and he probably had help from his genetic memory in recalling this. That's how special water is.
What I'm suggesting is that these truths, these actual events that occurred in the sky, could become conspiracy theories secondhand, and that the truth is often fabulized and infanticized, and that lies are often propped up with a little bit of truth in them.
Yes,
you're 100% right.
But the comets were being seen constantly.
Yeah, but that's not my point. I know that's true.
Yeah,
but
I was just talking.
This is a podcast about conspiracy theories, and what I'm trying to do is tie in the experience of seeing something real, and then a generation later or a continent later, that becoming something that's not believed or called a conspiracy theory by people who don't understand.
Well,
what I'm suggesting is that a conspiracy theory can be derived from the truth just as much as easily as it can be derived from a lie. And it really goes back to sort of my thesis, which is discernment. But the fact of the matter is that, what you described in this sky test is literally unbelievable unless you saw it for yourself. And so, and the fact that most people saw it is it lends to the truth of it. But but having not saw it and not believed a thing would then to you feel like a conspiracy theory being told. Why are all these people telling these lies about these peacocks in the sky, for example, or whatever?
Yes. It's
just how we think. And I think we have to be able to see transversely. Chris is really good at seeing the exact opposite truth in what's being presented. And I think I'm attempting to do that as well, and just say that the truth can be, that's what we see in the electric universe. We see ancient people saw things in the sky. Over time, they were personified. They were turned into religions. They were turned into secret cults.
Speaking
and
of
then
that,
they became conspiracy theories. And now,
just one point, they changed physics. This is the biggest thing. People like live their whole lives and they don't understand the ramifications of it. If a comet came close to Earth and changed the attributes of physics, that's the paradigm shift in the mind, right? Like, because it's new agey and it's always talked about, like, look at the parallel, look at the coincidence, and that's really seductive and it hits the serotonin. But the actual science of it is like saying, okay, it's recursive because this is the fundamental shape of geometry. Physics applies to this, so Earth was different. Then the whole fucking thing breaks apart. Excuse my language.
Yeah, and if you go to the Nuremberg sky phenomena for Nuremberg 1561, or just type Nuremberg 1561.
I'll get there. No
Everyone, that's also important because everyone's saying those are UFOs. They're not. They're meteors, and they're all related to comets.
Yeah, they were
and I've been looking
in.
at all the dates. Yeah, I've been looking like the one on the left and the one at the top and the one on the left. They're different years. But I've been looking, and every time there's one of these sightings, I mean, look at the spear. That's one of the typical shapes of comets, and all of the other ones are meteors, fireballs, and there's tubes. They're crazy. That's just crazy. I mean, there was like something really amazing to be seen, but that's all related to comets and the comet tail. They're not UFOs.
Let's digest that.
Fire
Go back
in the
1 second.
sky. Yes. Did you see the fire in the sky right there in the middle where you have your cursor? Okay, that's 1962, I think, Bade. Well, I have the comet, which looks like a sword, which we've seen before, like a sword coming down.
Right. And
then the same year, somewhere else, that was seen. Look at the fire that is coming down from the heaven. Look at that. That's a conflagration.
Well, that's what it's called. It's not even real, by the way. Just in case anyone was wondering. No. Let me be clear. It's not actually fire. It's a red aurora.
It looks like fire.
Yes.
No, it's fire that burns. It's not auroras. It's fire that burns.
Are you sure? Because the houses are on fire.
Yes. I have the historical records. And there was in 1421. There was a giant conflagration, like the one. Remember the one we talked about in Chicago?
Right. Oh, yes, that one.
Comet?
Yeah, we have
That's
that
what
here.
happened. That's what happened.
Well,
and
it's
then
just I don't see any damage on the ground in that picture. That was the only reason I was debating it.
No, that was fire. Let's say fire. And the fire didn't come from the ground. The fire came from the top, and it went down.
Just in case you're wondering, I thought it was something like this. In case you're wondering.
Yeah, no. That's
don't worry about it.
Just
mention
fire. Yeah, fire that burns.
What could it be actually? Like, what could possibly happen where it's like we're like nitrogen, right? Like, is it levels of nitrogen?
Well, it has to deal with it has to basically discharge. That's the problem. And we have to get rid of whatever charge is coming in. Like, that was the issue that was happening around when we were talking about in my presentation about fires in the sky. But Thunderbolts got info, and it was Chicago. And we should be able to find it. Yeah,
it was fire, and there is, like, remember the petrification? I mean, there is instant fossilization, instant petrification. There's electrical discharges.
Yeah.
But then there's also a fire, like boom, like just burning, like it's called a conflagration. And people could not understand it. And then people would go in the middle of the woods where there was no trees, and they would get burned and turn into ashes. And people saw
North American Indians described it as tornadoes of fire coming from space, from the heavens, from the Creator.
And they saw that just now, like in the 1600s, in the 1800s. I'm like, what? Things that you would read on the Bible about the Exodus, the pillar of fire in Avignon. In I think it was in the 1400s, or I have it. I just came out with this video because I made it.
Oh, I'll go find that one right now.
For 1 hour, they had a pillar of fire on top of the Pope's house in Avignon. A pillar of fire.
Sense.
1 hour. Okay, that's how they describe.
Let me put this in a let's look at this through a different type of lens. What about making it like akin to man discovering fire, or like humankind discovering fire? Basically, when you turn on a fire on a stove, it looks like magic. I mean, like, just the fact that like a construct within this conscious field, this dipole, was able to create fire is no less strange than space, shooting down, flames.
Oh yeah, and you see that comet Biela? That's Biela. That had a companion.
Well, it broke into two parts.
They're saying that no, it didn't break.
It didn't break.
It didn't break. It was It picked up a companion. Yeah.
Well, they were attached.
It didn't come back at a time when they were saying it was supposed to come back, and it went for a little detour, and I think it stayed around one of the planets. I honestly
don't think so. I think that I'm agreeing with these gentlemen here, and that
but they didn't show up until later. Well, yes, it could have definitely split.
Well, no, but the next pass of this would be the next hit would have been 1908. So the smaller one would have hit our planet in 1908. That would have been basically both of them right there, because one hit in 1868 and the other one hit in Russia in 1908.
And they had a plasma connection between the two of them. It's really cool when you go to the descriptions.
It was 2 million miles long, that connection. Yeah. Now, just in case you're wondering here, this is important, because we talk often about how people say, no, this was buried by people. And they say that this was buried, like Göbekli Tepe was buried. And I'm sure that there might be cases that it was, in fact, buried. But what I'm saying is that we don't because usually the only way to get fill into an area is to use water, and there's definitely signs of layering when you use water to put something inside of something. Sediment like falls, you get sand and then rocks and all that kind of thing. In this case, we have gravel that is just filling up that area. Well, it could have been just like we have, like I was talking about last week in Canada, we have tons of fill. Well, this is what I mean. This stuff would fall to Earth and bury things without necessarily being so hot that it fused together into new rock. And that's something that we're not used to in our experience. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, that wasn't that long ago. This stuff that happened.
From Mars, from the connection of the globe.
Oh yeah, in Mexico, well, they had all these pyramids that were covered over, and they didn't know why. And it wasn't like it was a flood came through the area. Did they bury them? To keep them.
Yeah, and how do we know that matter is transferred easily through these electrical processes?
Maybe that's why there's a forest on top of this whole thing down in the middle of South America, because where it was all sand when it was washing across Egypt, when it landed in the middle in Mexico and Central America, the area, it was fill, and then trees and everything. Of course, it's mixed with organic material, some of it, right? So there's dead things everywhere, just growing trees everywhere.
Everything getting pulverized, vaporized into dust, right?
Yeah, and mutations. They were seeing mutations and raining blood. I just want to clarify all this that I've been reading about the last 500 years, and people keep saying it's UFOs, and it really bothers me because it's not UFOs. Now maybe there are UFOs.
No, it's just the end of the world, Tess. That's all.
When you pull animals, like if things go up into the clouds, it's quite possible that they will. I mean, it could be just like an incubation chamber for blood, for all we know. It could be perfect food up there, and because it's very highly ionized, is what I'm saying. But also, it could be the result of pulling animals apart when they get up in the sky.
Well, they said that pieces of meat were coming down, which is disgusting.
Yes, never mind. Frogs. Yeah, I guess I was right.
Yes, those definitely. But
it has to be bigger animals. Frogs and fish are covered in water. They're different. They won't die.
Mammoths would do it.
Mammoths will get ripped to pieces.
was talking about I think iron or sulfur dioxide or iron oxide. That seemed to have been one of the things that looked like blood, raining blood.
Yeah, I think it's more akin to a transmutation of elements that causes when it gets into the atmosphere and mixes with the clouds and the water, it turns it to red. So it's not.
And then there's lots of stuff
blood
in comet.
per se.
No, it's not. Not so. That's what I'm saying.
I thought it was
so people start saying, "Oh, that's blood." The UFOs and blood. No, it's some element, some chemical, some element or some transmutation that definitely.
Look at the swords. I like the swords.
Yeah, look at the swords in there. Yeah. And unfortunately, they don't have in here the ones that look like the pyramid, but they are some that are backwards, the pyramid backwards. But you could see the hand, also the Tibetan hand with the eye in the middle, almost like the flame in there in the center.
Can I just suggest something physically as well? If you look at the swords, they look like feathers, and the hilt is the joint. It's the pinch. It's just like our arms.
Yeah,
and not only are the
that's what he's looking at.
Yeah, the image on the right.
Yeah.
It looks recursively like human joints and arms and bird feathers, but not only that, it looks like individual feathers, but when you arrange all the feathers, they also look like that.
That's awesome. Wow, look at those.
And you know why.
Look at all the sword designs. Wow.
It resembles the ends of the comets, they resemble peacock's tails.
That's so cool.
Remember also that
when they're flat.
There was a golden fleece that you were looking for. Doesn't that kind of look like a fleece, like an animal's fur?
Yes.
So I wouldn't be surprised if that was something that had to happen.
Wow, you always find the coolest photos of comets. How do you do that?
I literally just typed in old comet drawings. That's literally all I typed in. I do this all the time. Okay. Yeah, because I go, what is the stupidest words I can think of? Like, I'm really good at searching. I'm looking for the right word. Like, it's like playing a game of what's that thing that you Richard Dawson used to run it. What was it called? It was a show, a TV show. Richard Dawson. It was anyway. You had to pick a word, and that's what you try to do, because you have to try to pick a word that everybody else will use, not you would use, because I will use lithograph. That's not correct. People will go drawing, and that's what they will say, right? So let's go find those. And so you have to use the lowest common denominator in those.
We have to remember one thing when we're talking about comets in the past.
Yeah, hydrocarbons light up in fire, remember?
Yeah.
And the fireballs and the balls of fire.
And they're given off by comets as well. Hydrocarbons are detected in the tails of comets. So what I was saying when we're talking about comets, we all have to remember the genesis of a comet was Venus. Venus is birth. And you got to remember that during that event, a lot of rock was displaced from the body of Saturn, along with the body of Venus itself. And those particles became the comets and asteroids that we see today. Not only that, but some of the asteroids and comets are due to the interaction of Jupiter and Saturn as they were going out. It wasn't just one event. That's why we go through multiple bands of cometary debris every single year. I think there's 8 or 9 different meteor streams we pass through or something.
Well, I know the Leonids and stuff like that. Apparently, they were much more
there's so many.
In the past.
There's so many. But there's so many. Reading the ancient astronomers trying to calculate how many comets have come in. And calculating, it's just hundreds and thousands. They were calculating like hundreds of millions, because they know they're just oncoming all the time. And they can be also big. They don't have to be little pieces of rocks.
That's it right there.
They can be bigger.
Sorry, I'm pointing at my screen.
Cool.
I'm pointing at my screen, but look at the title. Scientists didn't believe in meteorites until 1803.
Oh, yes. Well, yeah, the new scientists, not all in the old times, they experienced them all the time.
But you see
so they had to believe on them.
And
they called our ancient history myth, and they poo-pooed on it in the early 1800s.
Well, people were probably still freaking out when these things were in the sky, right? So they were. I mean, look, this is a meteor shower. We don't have those today.
Oh wow! Look at that. Well, we haven't had that, but that's not very long ago. When is it?
No, that's
in the
only the
1800s.
1800s. Yeah.
Yeah, in the 1800s. That's
Imagine
only
what it was like
2,000
years ago when like
exactly.
the
when
Romans
the sky was more active.
The Romans must have been like,
Oh,
screw
it was
this, we're not
crazy.
going out.
Oh my goodness!
Like,
I cannot imagine.
The sky's on fire, we're not going out. No,
Mhm.
we're staying
Yeah,
in
that's
tonight.
no wonder- That's why people went to live underground. No wonder
Tess is
people
right
went to
about
live underground.
history being replete with fire coming from heaven. I mean, it's everywhere. And the reaction of the people in the past were trying to get away from the Bible as the authoritative history of everything. So they were saying things that anything that was in the Bible was wrong, and so that's kind of where that reason was trying to overcome church history.
That comment, Neil.
So,
Yeah,
but,
the Bible holds a lot of truths, and then there are a
Yes,
lot of
James,
truths in
exactly.
in science today too. So
I just wanted to point out that cults require disinformation or sacred information,
That's true.
which only is their little group. It's how the Nazis grew, and they actually believe that if they force everybody to believe a lie, that it becomes the truth, and that's what we're really fighting against here. So,
and now what they're saying, James, you know what they're saying now, that comets are yes, there's comets, but now they're saying it's comet impacts. Everything is an impact.
Yeah.
It's never an electric connection. And they could happen, like Andrew Hall has mentioned, and these people know because there was no impact. The comet, they just came, they saw it, oh, beautiful. Now we could say it's like, oh my God, look how beautiful. And then all that beautiful caused all kinds of volcanoes to go off, floods, tsunamis. Yes, there was also chunks of it coming down, definitely with meteors. But the electrical connection would cause a lot of problems on Earth every time. And they know, the Chinese tells you, everyone just knows because it was happening every time. And that's another disinformation.
No, he's talking about disease.
Tess, that rain of fire that was just pictured earlier were plasmoids. They're not stone. They're plasmoids falling from the sky from the electrical connection of a tail of a comet.
That's what I said, the hydrocarbons. Well, there could be hydrocarbons too on fire. Like they would say it was like a ball, like what they used to use in during the wartime, like long ago. They would have a ball with tar. They would put it on fire and they would throw it. They saw that coming down from heaven too. So it was just like tar on fire.
Yeah, let me jump in and throw a question to y'all. Just a quick question. What the psychology behind conspiracies, right? To keep the show's topic around this. Why do people find it easier to believe in literally aliens in UFOs than a comet, than our space that we live in being volatile, which is completely normal? And day to day, we kill each other and people die and people are born.
Or plasma discharge, Chris. Yeah.
But more so, what is it? The serotonin? Is it the seductiveness of the argument? Is it propaganda? Is it imposed? Why people find that they need this? They need to believe that UFOs are real.
Yeah, and they're reptilians.
They need a higher power. Is that it? As opposed to chaos? I don't know.
What I'm leading is to like I guess that's a kind of answer, Neil, is like what is it sort of, and like how can we shift that, because this is way more exciting than aliens.
Oh yeah,
way more exciting, because this is like what our ancestors, who everyone's always so proud, we're listening to history, and if you're really a history buff, and it's always touted that we're such historians.
Like we could be okay with this, but you cannot be okay with this. Like, I mean, these guys weren't even getting killed. It's not even like the ancients who were literally getting smoked. Like they were going.
So I know I sound really contested. Just quickly, I want to finish that last point, which is I sound like a lot of people who are into aliens and into this idea and have seen UFOs, I think get kind of triggered by what I say. But I just want to follow through, is that I think, and I've seen UFOs or whatever. I filmed UFOs. Like, that's the other thing. I filmed extremely detailed shots of things going across the moon that I could easily say are UFOs, and I'm 100% convinced it's our stuff. Just gonna say it. I don't say 100, like 99.99999% shit. it's our stuff, because like there's no point in having this extra grass is greener. It's already insane that we exist, and by virtue of existing, this technology exists, and by virtue of like having these people work on it. Look, they instituted a space force. They're either serious about it or they're not. So like there is a system that knows exactly how important space is. Why is anyone watching any type of TV or fantasy when there's literally a space force?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's crazy. Like that's the disconnect. Like, what is the psychology behind that? Is it
you
serotonin?
See this right here?
Yeah,
I just saw the layers.
Spiral. Yes.
It has layers or something, just like the Sapphire
that's
project.
Yeah, that's the comments. I have pictures like that on my website. I can't remember which comments they are, the names, but Holtz or whatever. Yeah, there's some really amazing new photos. People should go and check out my videos, because that's what I've been doing, like the latest ones.
The pictures are amazing.
Plasma photos, and I'm talking about the comments that came in, and how they are described, and some old, like you have these cool photos in here, or drawings, because they didn't have photography, but they have amazing paintings and drawings, and so they can learn. And instead, when somebody says, "Oh, look at the alien photos, UFOs," and people can go and say, "No, there was a comet that year and the year before." And sometimes the crazy things happen during within a year, could be before or after, because remember, the tail of the comet could connect with Earth before or after it was seen, not necessarily until it was seen when everything happened. That could be maybe the fireballs or the chunk of the comet coming down, of course. But yes, there's things that could happen before or after. So people can be more prepared and know and say, no, that's not a UFO. Let's go and find out. Look up for this comet and tell them the year. And they'll find the comet.
Touch it with a metal rod. It's not a UFO.
You know what it is, actually? I think there's this whole there's a big paradigm push of the universe has not been active in a long time. So people have a hard time imagining that 100 or 200 or 1,000 years ago,
especially electrically active.
Yeah, so I think it's that. It's like
electrically.
nothing's happened for 160 million years, since the dinosaurs. There's that's been pushed so deeply that that's in people's kind of in the ethos. People think, oh, that's the last really great calamity on Earth. Yeah, there have been ice ages or whatever, but basically it's been stable. But literally fire and blood, like the worst possible shit might have happened 1,000 years ago.
You're absolutely right. One of the things I dislike very much is they use the term, if you use the term millions and millions of years ago, it might as well just be saying, and then something magical happened. Because that's all you just said. Because that's all it really means. Because there's no friggin' way you can prove any of that. Like
exactly.
It's
so distant.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, we can say something calamitous happened, but you're giving dates to things when we don't even, I mean, we just realized how to change the clock on your dating mechanism. So, I mean, what was the time frame or decay rate of a piece of meat falling from the sky that was turned to stone because it was blasted to pieces in a 15 trillion ampere discharge? Like, what is the electrical decay rate on that? Do you got the math? Can you do that up for me? Like, you can't. So what are you talking about millions of years ago? Like, that could be totally wrong now. And that is something that they really want to hold on to, because it turns geology into a real science with real numbers. And otherwise, it's just a descriptive science.
All right, pop science would come back at you and say, "Well, you guys are crazy because they have ice core samples and they have tree ring counting, and they have potassium dating." No, I'm not. I'm going to debunk all of those too. But
okay. I wasn't even going to
can only
those.
Count up to. It's only 10 to 20,000 years, and then the rest is basically extrapolated from a certain type of mathematical principle and a database. Everything past 20 to 50,000 years is extrapolated that way, including like the half-life decay of isotopes.
Why am I clicking on
dating,
Why am I clicking on comments and it goes to cannibalism again? Why is this happening?
Well, not only that, it's all based on uniformitarian principles that are In between thunderbolts of the gods, yes, work some of the time, not all of the time, but those principles can be done in minutes and hours instead of millions of years by these thunderbolts of the gods. That we have to acknowledge that.
It's different values of it, right? It's not new things. Like lightning exists, just make it 100,000 times more powerful, and all of a sudden you see these different results, right? So it doesn't have to be even
And it
alien.
becomes the god who clothes himself in clouds.
Well, I was just going to say it'd be scary enough when the Etruscan Empire became the Romans, because up the river from the Etruscans, a 5-mile lightning bolt hit and blew the city away that they lived in. So they went down, and Rome was founded. It was like, okay, that's what's out on there. Because those guys were blown to pieces. And even in Rome, they were talking about lightning from the skies, bolt from the blue, just blow ships right out of the water, like sailing into harbor.
When they say that Romulus and Remus, the two, caused the birth of Rome, they weren't lying, because everybody moved down to Rome, like you say.
Perhaps today is a good day to die. Oh, sorry, I was thinking of Star Trek.
James, Rome is an interesting effect there. Oh, geez, something took away my thought. Go ahead.
Yoink! Gotcha. So we were talking about...
That was 5G. Sorry, by the way, James, that was 5G that took away your thought. Rex would say that.
Yeah. Thank you. So what is? Let's go on with this. I'm very happy with the idea of lizard people. Is there something in the audience would like to touch on before we get to something a little bit weirder? Because
there are some interesting comments coming up in the audience. Would you like to hear a few?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm going through here, taking a look.
All right. Well, let's see. Starting back with Ryan in North Carolina, or NC. I wish for EV to see the Petrovsky stones and hear what they think.
Petrovsky stones?
Yes.
I don't know what they are. Let's go take a look.
I bet you they're spheres.
There we go. Petrovsky stones. Oh, whoa. I was expecting a picture. Why? Are they not rocks? Tell me they were rocks. I thought they were rocks. I'm getting graphs. Am I spelling Petrovsky right? Is that how you spell Petrovsky?
No, I'm sorry. He was just asking if Petrovsky is stoned. That's all. Never mind.
Oh, guys, Jesus.
Actually, I have a quick question before we get to the questions. That actually wasn't the question. What somebody was asking. Speaking of Lapointe.
Right.
I saw somebody asked about Lapointe. I wanted to know if any of you know what his theory is. I know he says that the electricity doesn't drive the universe. He doesn't think that's what it is. And Ramon mentioned ether, because I was asking, well, what does? What do you guys think does if it's not electricity? Does anyone know what he according to him drives the universe, and then what, according to you, your opinion?
Magnetic fields tests.
Magnetic fields.
Is that what
so they are the
says?
first original, like that's where everything comes from? I guess
that's what he thinks, yeah.
He thinks it's magnetic fields. Okay, now what do you guys think? So he thinks it's magnetic fields.
Well,
so
I know that without a flow of charge, a movement of charge, you won't have a magnetic field. Those and gravity are a result of flowing energy.
Yeah, they are the same things, because one's just a reaction to the other, and you can induce one with the other, clearly. I mean, we do it all the time. In fact, But
it's the chicken or the egg, right?
Well, it is the chicken and the egg, but what the end result is that with the sheer amount of space that there is around the sun, and how small the sun is compared to how much space there is, there's a lot of electric charge there, and there's no water to drown it out or to dampen it. I mean, it's dry as a bone. So of course you're going to get this possibility. I mean, go ahead.
And how does that fit in, like the rarefied plasma and the ether? How does that fit into the magnetic fields and the electricity?
James, did you want to talk?
How is it different? Maybe if you can clarify that, that'll be great.
Okay, well, I'll be real quick.
Go ahead, Neil.
The idea of the ether is a different question. The ether becomes, what does light ride on? Like, what is waving when light is going through it? That's what the ether is. It is a mathematical, because we can measure light. And so we can deduce, because of waveform, the permittivity and permeability of empty space, and that right there could be the thing that changes inside different electrical densities. We don't know. We've never been outside of any electrical density except for the one we're currently in. And we don't exactly throw too many spaceships outside of that, which we've just sent 2, and we launched them in, what, 77? So it takes a while to get there. But
as Don Scott says, they're still inside the Birkeland current, so they won't see the changes until they get out past the Birkeland current that we're on, right? So
yeah, they're still in our little plasma.
I got Miles Mathis says that the gravity is the inverse of the column cosmic charge. So it's kind of the way the universe balances itself. The charge is 10 to the 10th, and the gravity is the inverse of that. So yeah. Yeah.
Actually, is that the idea of pushing gravity? Is that the? I mean, because that's what that theory seems to imply, doesn't it?
If we talk about gravity, we should really bring up Ken Wheeler. You know, the mutual mass acceleration concept is really pretty on point. Speaking of LaPointe, though, what is very fascinating to me about it is that when you really watch the primer fields rather, and you see his latest video, if it's still up, where he's in the forest, he's basically given people the blueprint to create healing devices. I know it's really
who's going to make it? Who's going to make one?
Yeah, everyone should get
You're
that.
The scientist to do it.
It's not that he's going to make it.
I don't want to hear.
They are available. They are available for purchase right now. It's not that he's going to make it; he's making them now.
He gave the blueprints for free.
Exactly.
So,
electrical healing boxes have been more than a century long. It's just that the medical society,
more than a century.
Says that they don't have any reality to them. They're just a belief system. So, but that's funny because medicine really, or any intellectual infrastructure, is a belief system. And if you believe it works, it will work. So that's really what it comes down to.
Well,
actually, yeah,
there is some truth to mind over matter, and I'm not arguing with that. But there is also truth to, I don't care what you think, this projectile is going to pass through your body. it's going to happen. So there are certain things that are real. Like, I mean, it doesn't matter what you think. You can go, well, this possibly won't hurt me. No, that's liquid Drano. That is gonna hurt you. Type of idea. So we have to understand there's only so much your body can do, I guess, is what I'm saying.
This is fascinating. I agree, Neil, entirely with that. It's also like if you somehow get an immortality spell, you're going to still fall off a cliff.
Yeah.
And you could still die even if your body never aged.
Actually,
or you never
but your belief systems are going to jump into this. I mean, there are people who drink really poisonous things, and they believe that the God's going to keep them, and they're just fine. So it depends on a lot of factors. Of course, if you're going to fall off a cliff, and there's not going to be much of you to be picked up from your belief system. But, but beliefs do have just like consciousness is really the only thing that really exists.
So just the quick point on the science of LaPointe's primer fields is that if you look at that in conjunction with Sapphire Project, SAFIRE for others, you'll see that it's two different ways of representing the same exact thing. He might not agree exactly with Thunderbolt's project, and Don Scott and these guys might not agree exactly with David, but I think taken in conjunction, you'll see that essentially plasma tries to form the strongest shape. Strongest shape is a sphere. If the spheres meet other spheres, they start creating hexagonal forms, and it's because the same geometry exists throughout. David Lapointe puts these bowls, inverted bowls, that basically follow the same lines as the Birkeland field and the conjugate geometry of the torus and the hourglass. And because he arranges the magnets inside the bowls along Fibonacci spirals, like chrysanthemums or like any type of flower, spiral that we show in Discord a bunch, the plasma flowing through those bowls, coming to a point between the bowls, is amplified. It's a different level complexity of plasma. And when he arranges the magnets, they also arrange in this idea, it gives away this idea that things arrange tightly packed, but also ultimately always separated. This is the concept of what things are floating, gravity, bubble universe, connectivity. Why things actually work is because there's arrangement logic to the universe, but also things are also kept apart at every level.
I would just like to mention
Cool.
that
Thank you.
the guy who's on the Thunderbolts and the water guy, I forget his name.
Dr.
But
Gerald
anyway,
Pollack.
he's going into why do birds actually fly? Because they're not flapping their wings. And if you ever seen a little tiny chick get thrown out of its nest to fly, you see those little tiny wings. It's like there's nothing hardly there, and they're a lot bigger than their wings, and yet they fly. It's like, what in the world is really going on here? So whatever.
Birds' bones are porous. This idea of porosity being what allows things to float. Like before the show, we were talking about the moon possibly being hollow, but I started to think, like, from these comets, that maybe it's these rocks with really huge gaps in them, basically like three-dimensional honeycomb structures that start to basically build big cavities, like Swiss cheese, for example.
Three-dimensional, like these?
Yeah, like these, but within rocks, right? So the rock appears solid from the outside, but in fact, there's high porosity, and high porosity would create charge.
Matter.
Right. Actually, you were talking about matter and mass, and who talks about it? I think Robitaille, or I'm sure I've seen a video on Thunderbolts about like the Wallace Thornhill. Wallace Thornhill.
Wallace Thornhill. I love that.
Wallace Thornhill talks about matter and mass, and how we don't really have the proverbial we don't have a grasp on what that is. But it really is true. It's like both of these things exist, and depending on where it is in the charge in the ether, theoretically,
that
there
has
a
to be the
mass.
next bad guy in the Marvel universe, Wallace Thornhill.
Wallace Thornhill. I still want to prove that Thanos is Venus.
That's a good one.
The chin is the same geometry we're looking at with the shells.
You're right. Actually, it is.
So are we done with Petoskey stones?
I didn't know. I thought you were joking.
Did we move on? I think Ryan was joking.
Oh.
We didn't finish the talking about David Icke unless you wanted to talk about some other questions.
I want to make sure that go to the audience, because really what we already dealt with what David Icke. We already talked about the idea of what they're really.
There's no snake people.
I want to get into something new. Basis. I think. I mean, for the next little bit.
There were a couple of interesting comments about Christmas trees. Let's see. Kronos said the Christians hijacked Saturnalia and created Christmas, and said, just kidding, but it shows the possibility of cognitive bias. If they discover 100 years from now a photo of a Christmas tree after the civilization has died, they will think, oh, they knew Z-Pinch, which I thought was a really interesting comment. Like the conspiracy theory is really in the eye of the beholder, and what is true to some people is completely outlandish to others, and that is a process that is alive and is constantly changing. And the idea of a Christian would tell you that pagans have infiltrated Christmas with pagan symbolism. But here he says the Christians hijacked Saturnalia and created Christmas. it's the same story, isn't it? This a process of these pagan elements existing in a Christian holiday. But from the Christian's perspective, there's been a infiltration, and from the non-Christian's perspective, the true story has been hijacked. So it's that dynamic that I think is fascinating. That's kind of being laid out here. Kronos also says reference to the cosmic mountain goes all the way back to the earliest writing we have found. Enlil is the Sumerian personification of that great mountain, and which I thought was also, in keeping with Electric Universe thought and absolutely true as usual from Kronos. He knows what he's talking about, that guy. Amethyst Crystal said that crystal swords found and buried in Europe. This is breaking news, and that these are
I saw those.
believed to be older than iron, which I think is an interesting way to look at new information being perceived as can't possibly be true until otherwise proven. And so this seems like an outlandish claim, but also potentially quite true. So I'd like to know more about the crystal swords found buried in Europe for sure. Let's see. Holloway Arts says, bear in mind that some of us have seen UFOs. And this is the reason I found the EU, trying to understand what I saw, which I think brings up a point that we've mentioned before as well, which is that each of us have our own entry into EU theory and the EU paradigm. And most of those entry points are ultimately fallacious or completely untrue in some way. We all got here by, you have to stand on the shoulders of bullshit to get to see, above the trees, right?
I saw UFOs for the first time last year, sitting in my mother-in-law's backyard, looking up in the sky, a V formation with two objects orbiting around them, and they were moving in a V formation. Military aircraft don't fly in a V formation at night like that. Satellites don't travel like that either. I've seen some things in the sky that could be aliens. That's why I always leave my open brain open to the possibilities that maybe there are extraterrestrials, but I doubt it.
There certainly could be, but I'm just not everything is. let's go with natural before we go to supernatural is my idea.
Exactly.
And how about the micronova too? Let's not forget to talk about the micronova.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Sorry, that's not the alien.
No, that's good.
Going back to aliens. Yes, they could.
I'm looking for swords, so I'm still looking for the crystal sword.
Yeah, I think there's also a lot of military, space. I mean, they even tell the people that there's a lot of things that they don't tell people what they're doing. So, I mean, there could be also a lot of military from everywhere, every country doing their things that we see at night, all kinds of experiments and all kinds of things going on. But
let me talk quick about this psychological aspect. Aliens. The psychological aspect is that people are really tied to this idea of aliens and spacecraft because of a reason. Whatever that reason may be, the actual science is way more exciting. That's how you get off that monorail of I was there. Simply for me, it's about actually discovering what space was without government agency involvement, like buying the scope, learning, studying, and believing that there were people who were like me 1,000 years ago referencing the moon and writing about it. So once you get there, you realize that I said the same thing. Star Brother and Ascension. I was deep. I was as deep as anyone could get. You can imagine.
I was a Pleiadian.
Yeah, exactly. Tess, right?
Where did you come from?
I'll meet you on Cygnus with Wilcock and yeah. Yeah, exactly. No, I thought, I was from the underground and there were families underground.
We were star seeds.
Look, there could. Ultimately, I'm with Rick also, there is that slim chance, or there is a chance actually that there are a lot of aliens and that it's normal. However, from the proof, what we really have is this stuff, which is there were comets, there were crazy shit. There was already such amazing stuff happening, and there's amazing stuff we can still do without any aliens at all. You don't need them to make the story exciting. And that's where I think the compelling argument for getting off the psychological bus of a conspiracy and embracing science. And a lot of people tell me, Electric Universe is not science, but those people are not really like on. They don't have.
What is your computer running on then? Jesus.
Exactly. There is this cognitive denial
Gravity?
of things, but yeah, but I really think it is that, like, you have to be able to validate people who've had UFO experiences. Those people are not crazy. They've definitely seen things. I've seen things. I've filmed things, but at the same time, it's way more logical that we have very.
But did you see the person? See, the day that I have seen things too. Actually, my sister saw those plasma formations that are amazing from Mexico. I don't know if you remember this guy who was he said he was taken up in one of these spaceships, and they are like plasma. They're like a big circle, and then they have little balls around on the edges. They're like alive, and they film really. I'm gonna try to find a video and then share it with you guys.
I'm showing you one now.
They are
okay.
They
So
are
how
amazing.
to tie it together? Let's say government did it. You're like, who done
Oh yeah,
it?
no, I don't think those were government. I think those were too beautiful and too natural. They were like just like plasma.
But
they
plasma
were like
could
Well, they look
also
metallic.
induce trips?
Yeah, but that's the thing.
I'm just watching ball lightning on camera.
The day that I see a guy or an alien coming out and talking to me, then, or talking to the people, then I'm going to say, oh, and it's really an alien, not just a military person dressed as an alien, because they probably have some amazing technology that we have no idea, and they can do amazing things. So I won't believe it, but I do know that they are beings of different, like we were talking about, like alive sentient beings made out of plasma or something, and maybe that's what people see and they call them UFOs. That could be definitely is possible.
Neil,
What bothers me,
try searching for Mexican UFO sightings.
Well, I was just going with ball lightning, so.
But that was so amazing. I'm going to try to find it. That was really cool.
That's plasma
shapes. Yeah, they're plasma shapes.
That's where I think we will find.
But in a way, like, not to belabor this, but isn't that us?
What?
Mm-hmm. Not me.
I'm saying, look at your wrist and look at your palm and tell me we are not those plasma beings. We're definitely those plasma beings. So are fish and bacteria, and they're all these things.
Oh, that's
these things
true.
I just mean they're not separate from us. I think it's what's separate from us seems enticing. It's the grass is greener salvationism mentality of like, oh, there's always this other, versus like it's exactly us, and that should be enough. It's the living in the moment.
That's a really important point. Yep.
Yes.
I agree absolutely with that. I think it's the otherizing that I have a problem with. I don't have a problem with distant brothers or cousins from another mother. I have a problem with otherizing other human life forms to the extent that they can be looked at as the enemy. I think that not that they're not our enemies. I don't know those things, but the point is that our language needs to be really inclusive to the extent that ultimately we don't know one way or the other, so many things, and we have to fill in a lot of blanks. And I think what's interesting is listening to everybody talk today is I don't think that we could really agree on what's an actual truth and what's an actual conspiracy theory on any given topic. I think at the end of the day, we're all in a state of fluid sort of understanding. And my own feeling on these things is that there are multiple different possibilities that could be true. And we haven't gotten to the point where we absolutely need to know that yet, because we've got more work to do as we're doing today. So I think that the conspiracy theory is just sort of a one way to look at any given thing that exists ever, and anytime we're holding truths. I'm kind of curious about our heroes. Do each of you have a hero that has fallen from grace in your life with respect to science and cosmology? And what have you done about, sort of like, they were mentioning in Carl Sagan in the comments, and even Einstein, and there's many theories and conspiracy theories about Tesla, and so many of our great minds are just seeped with conspiracy theories. And I think my sort of idea is that if there are multiple conspiracy theories around a topic, that means the truth is more amazing. The truth that's being covered up is always going to be more amazing than the lie that's created to cover it. That's the nature of disinformation. And so a lot of these, like, I don't think we know half of what Tesla had to tell us, for example. Just as for one example, but anytime you've got multiple conspiracy theories cropping up about a particular person or a particular idea, it means that the truth is more amazing. And I think that's a powerful idea to sort of grasp onto.
I wanted to show you what this picture was. Did you know this happened? Did anyone remember or know that this occurred? None of you were alive.
Oh, when?
1942.
I saw this.
A bunch of UFOs appeared over Los Angeles, and they opened fire on them. Like, they literally went to town.
I think they
on
were
them.
Japanese. Have you heard the story of this guy?
No, I haven't heard anything about them. I'm just looking at what happened.
Douglas? Yeah, check out Douglas Dietrich. He's half Japanese, and he's talked so much about these that he just makes so much sense. He says that they were Japanese, and I wouldn't be surprised.
Japanese balloons?
Some cool technology. Again, we don't know. See, what they tell us is not the truth of what the military are using. And I think this is when the whole UFO thing started, the fake alien, during this time when they were obviously, people were seeing them. It was too obvious to hide them. So then they created the aliens. The aliens.
Exactly. This is exactly
the aliens.
Right. Yeah.
And since 1940, the 40s. And I think that's really what it is. And he says, no, it was Japanese people. And those tiny people that they say they captured and they were half burned.
It's another distraction. It's another distraction.
They were
it's Hollywood. It's literally complete Hollywood stuff. Like, this is part of the conspiracy world.
I believe it was Tesla's work and T. Townsend Brown's work in anti-gravity that brought that up.
Let's not crosstalk too much. What were you saying there, Duff?
Chris.
Or Chris?
Me?
Oh, thank you. Okay, no, I was just going to... Sorry, I'm eating also. But no, I'm just saying that all these alien events... Yeah, it's like Tess said, exactly right. If you follow the money and you follow the timeline, there was a certain timeline for population, for census, global census, WTO, the UN, the locations of the UN along ley lines. These threads, like who said it in the chat? I just want to validate them. 1 second. Cole Panacci says, it's not a conspiracy theory, it's a fact that people are conspiring. And I want to say that that's true, because really conspiracy theory was fabricated by people who are conspiring. Even the concept, the phrasing of that was instituted into the rhetoric so that people would use this type of language to denounce and decry people who were calling out what is obviously fallacy and conspiring.
I knew who first brought that into the lexicon, the CIA.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
But why this is the case is what kind of gets to people. I think, again, why people are interested in UFO, aliens, and disclosure, for example. We haven't mentioned disclosure, but that was.
Oh yes, please do.
So why do people want disclosure, and why it will never happen? Here's the 60-second hot take. The hot take is that government is business. It's not a government. They sell this product called democracy, and they show you their promotion of their two presidents into office, which is the head of the company. The media is their PR outlet, and the media has no desire for people to be intelligent, because that's not a good consumer. A good consumer is somebody who's on their toes and who doesn't understand the premise of things.
And you wonder why people out here are going, can you tone down the capitalism? No, please?
So... Since that's the case, it's not like everybody can change. People are still going to want the news. It's seductive. I keep talking about this seduction, or this. Why is it enticing for people to want aliens or disclosure? It's simply because the powers that be, the propaganda has been like, you're useless, you're worthless, you're a cancer on this planet. We have to leave Earth. You're destroying Earth. You're the worst. Aliens hate us. Everybody hates us. You suck. People. This is what bullies do, right? But bullies are usually the ones that actually suck and people don't like and aren't smart and can't play an instrument, right? It's the flip. It's this mirror reality where the people who actually bully are the uncool people who are saying that they're cool. And the people who are bullied are actually the cool people who don't realize it till much later. And so what happens is with alien technology is that we've had this for a very long time. Likely the Egyptians sort of had some resonant devices. They could see plasma maybe in the desert or whatever. Like maybe the planet was rich with electrical ether, right? Like we could see all this stuff.
Was.
So you could build things exactly according to where things were. Everyone had ley lines like visible in front of them to some degree, or we had the awareness maybe at the size of being like progenitors. Let's say we were 20 feet tall. Maybe at that point consciousness is so complex that you can actually pick up field lines or see different spectral, right? It's a magnitude charge thing. I never thought of that, just riffing, but
no, that's cool.
Anyway, Hollywood has a stake in making this look real, is the point.
We have to get to Duff's question, is that who is my hero that fell? And I would have to say that the scientific establishment was what fell for me, because they, like any conspiracy which requires an infrastructure of lies to make their cult, science is not willing to. It's doing its own cultish lying to itself, in particular that the Earth's orbit has always been exactly as it has been, which I happen to know it hasn't been since the 7th century. And they pretend that the calendar changes were just, fanciful little changes when they were changing all at the same time all around the world, as V proved. So the Earth's orbit has not been the same. The Moon has not been the same. Their retro calculations are a day or two off after the 16th century. It goes on and on and on. They're lying to themselves and to us. And
because their theory must be correct. Yes, that is the issue. The issue is their theory is becoming more important than science, and that's not the way it's done.
All based on mathematical models.
I mean, don't get me wrong, it can really help. I mean, I'm 100% sure that being able to calculate eclipses is an important thing. Don't get me wrong, I think that's important. But if you're going to say, and nothing has ever changed ever, well, no, that's just like saying, again, you're back to millions and millions of years. You're just like saying magic. Stop. Bad for you. They got to not use that crutch, because it allows you to get away with, well, anything you want. I mean, if I was allowed to have one free miracle, I can do anything.
Like dark matter.
Dark matter, exactly. Oh, we can't see it, but it must be there. Exactly. No.
What do you think about disclosure, Neil?
I would like to think that the worst idea that I have is the Werner von Braun idea, that they're going to try to fake us into thinking that there are some sort of aliens or whatever, and bring about whatever they were going to do with that as being the goal or as the mechanism. I don't
look at it. Yeah, that's exactly what this is. This is Blue Beam.
That's like Ronald Reagan.
Everyone thinks Blue Beam hasn't happened, but Blue Beam happened. Paperclip happened. All these things already. This is the propaganda that makes people think there are aliens versus investigating plasma physics.
And I think that one of the problems is that when you actually have an idea that like they couldn't sell, like they try to sell that come from Mars. Well, then we realized when we got to Mars that that's ridiculous. Nothing's there. And then you sit there and go, okay, well, they suddenly changed it and they're really into the other dimension thing now. So now you can get kaijus to come from an alternate dimension and they can invade the Earth, just like Thanos can come from an alternate dimension and invade the Earth. You don't need to come from space anymore. You can just teleport there. That's the goal now. You're going to cross space just like a Star Trek episode. Well, that has been going through every single sci-fi show I've ever seen in the last little bit. But as you know, the Electric Universe will basically tell you that that's probably not true. There's no such thing as multi-dimensions, and we only have one, and we live in this one, and all forces are here.
But we see stars and planets, so they're if you talk about dimensions in terms of scalar.
No, I'm not.
And Tesla was talking about. But if you think about it in that context, then it actually perfectly makes sense. It is multidimensional.
Okay,
Everything
okay.
being
Well, yes, but
magnitudes.
I'm referring to solely.
Agreed. Other
yeah,
like magical
yeah,
dimensions for
just a hole in
11th
space
dimension stuff.
where they can throw a nuclear missile through, and then Iron Man can fall back out of, and then the Hulk can wake him up on the middle of New York, and that's what they want.
A wormhole.
But that's simple. Okay, let's talk about that.
No,
That's
no,
a big
I think
conspiracy.
that's why they've switched from they did a big switch from space to this in the 90s. We were like, the whole thing was falling apart, and so they had to switch to this new idea of dimensions, and so now that's a big thing, and then they're really going in this direction. But the electric universe will go, stop, that's wrong, or more than likely wrong. And if they would not want that to be the case, that would make them have to start over again. They're basically trying, if this is the case, they're trying to come up with a pill that everyone can swallow. And if this happens, they can't swallow this pill again. They have to go to the next pill, because they couldn't swallow. They came from Mars, because guess what? They've been trying that since the 40s with the radio show and everything else, and Mars attacks and everything, all that. And we don't buy it. We don't buy it at all. It became a comic. It became Mars attacks. It became a joke of itself. So anyway, I'm sorry. I'm just rambling. But
I also wanted to say. Yeah, I also wanted to say that that's another really interesting point that you're talking about. I think what I've seen, what I'm understanding from reading through history is that before it was God who caused all the disaster, and it was
right.
God's will. And now, instead of saying it's nature, it's the comets. Now, instead of saying it's nature, it's the comets. Now they're saying it's the aliens or it's the governments. For example, the 1908 Tunguska event that we were talking about, and I was asking you that it seems to have been caused by a discharge, a cometary discharge, because there is no what do you call it? There is no
crater.
What's it called?
Impact.
Crater. There's no crater, but they're all burned. They got all completely charred, all the trees, as an electrical discharge. What I've been hearing is from people saying that it was Tesla. Tesla was doing an experiment, and that's what happened. And it has to be anything but comets,
and
electrically
the
discharging.
And the Tatarians say that they had nuclear weapons back then. Well,
yes.
No.
And
well, they also thought that they had nuclear weapons in the 1700s with Napoleon too. So
yeah. Also, when I've been listening, for example, to Carrie Cassidy talk about, instead of saying anything about the electric universe, anything about comets, and a lot of people, I used to listen to her like 7 years ago, and a lot of people listen to her and trust what she says. And now what she's saying is that everything's the governments. The government is so now the governments are the new gods.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Instead of nature doing things for a lot of being responsible. And of course we have weapons. Of course, but of course the governments have weapons.
The governments are just
I don't have any weapons.
mouthpieces for the globalists.
I have tons of weapons in my video games.
UN.
But I think that's another trend of what's going on now. So now the governments are the new gods of the past. Anyways, I just thought I mentioned that, and the Tesla and the death ray.
I've heard that, the death ray idea, and you're right. But obviously, I'm not in favor of that one. This is a perfect example of what would happen if you don't think that these things hold that much energy, and they clearly hold a lot of energy.
Yeah, and what about the rods? What they call them, rods of God or something like that, which is it looks like an asteroid. It looks like an asteroid hitting, but the angle of it comes in like Russia. Remember the Chelyabinsk?
Yes.
Is that what it was? Chelyabinsk thing. Okay, well, this look like asteroids, but they could also be man-made. So it gets really confusing.
Can I comment on this Tunguska picture right here, this 2002 thing? If you pull up Sapphire Project, you can see.
I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, it's exactly the same for a reason. At the core of the tree,
I
right?
never thought of the tree as a
filament,
Birkeland current.
The trees are grown. I'll take it one further, and a urine. People's pee basically comes out in a twisting film, like along a spiral, like it spirals.
Water out of the tap.
Water out of a tap.
Like
Yeah, it's so obvious that we live in this connected universe. I say it with such conviction because it's all. Yeah, I know what I was going to say. Tess has made a really great point. Electric universe is the one thing that nobody will touch. Hollow Earth has made it. We live inside of a giant has made it.
Yeah, anything
but electric universe. Joe Rogan to Veritasium to 2 Minute to PBS to Discovery to PBR, NBC, PBS. All of them will not even touch that space was like active, that comets could have caused the plague, that dinosaurs are like an anomaly if gravity doesn't change or the size of Earth didn't change. There are these massive overturnings of paradigms that are not touched. They're not even like, they don't even look at them like, oh, bro. I mean, you're telling me that Joe Rogan has never considered doing like a week-long expose with the Electric Universe? Of course he has, and he can't do it. Either he can't or he doesn't want to.
Just the witness testimonies alone of the Tunguska blast, if I just went over the witness testimonies one at a time and we talked about them, you would see each one of those witnesses violated a law of physics. And they didn't do it themselves. They were accurate. They were totally accurate in what they were saying, but the things that they were saying were dismissed as being fictional because they said it violated the laws of physics. And one
there you go.
For example, they said Ogdi returned to Earth. He was coming down with his giant white beard of fire. That's who the god was returning to Earth. That's who they thought was coming. Remember, they had to sit there by themselves for 20 years before someone came and found them. Okay, from the other part of the world to say that was a comet or that was something else. And they didn't even know then. So these people had their own story by the time these people got there. And people were blown off their feet from the light, from just when the light hit them. When the light hit, not before the shock wave even got to them.
Wow.
Just that hit them. And it must have been like a pulse wave, like an EMP wave. And it created a bang as it went by them. When they saw it, it was simultaneously with the explosion in the sky. As they could see the beard on fire and they could hear the beard on the earth shaking the rocks. Like that's what it was to them. And so they just thought the god was returning to Earth, and that's what was going on. And his name was Ogdi. So when I think about what they went through that day, okay, and it was 7 miles in the sky when it exploded, and obviously 30 megatons. So, and of course, what this was a discharge. There's so many discharge pathways were coming from this rock that it looked like a beard. Okay, that's how many tendrils were reaching to the ground looking for a leader charge to touch. And when it touched, that thing in the sky exploded. And the Earth was protected. Once again, I'm sorry about us beings on top of it. No, it was only a small scratch compared to what it would have been if it actually touched. So, that's better.
You're talking about the Tunguska, right?
I am, yes.
Yeah, and did you know that they didn't allow any exploration of the site for like 20 years?
That's what I was saying. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And did you see this? That I just put the. Did you see that I put the link to the Comet Morehouse?
It's not that they didn't allow it, Tess.
It's really weird.
It took them 20 years to get a scientific expedition together.
Okay,
no, it took them 20 years to go and investigate it. They said, 20 years ago this thing happened over there.
Well, yes,
I'm sorry, that's absurd.
It makes perfect sense, though. You got to understand what was happening at the time. So they're sitting there in 1908. A great big thing occurs in the middle of Siberia, explodes, and then just when they were thinking, Tsar, you should go out there and send someone out there, a bunch of people came up and killed him and buried him and his family in a ditch. And then they started a whole new thing that had to get its whole new thing off the ground, which took at least a decade or so. And it makes perfect sense how long.
And then they sent somebody.
Then they sent someone. Now that they, now that they've done conquering everything. doing whatever they're doing, letting people. But yeah, because it made perfect sense. I mean, when you think of 1908, I mean, how hard would it be to go there? I mean, it took them months just to get there, like 2 years almost. I don't know how long it took them to get there.
And we're talking in the middle of nowhere. I mean,
literally
in a vast country.
Literally
Russia's,
nowhere.
Like if you watched SCTV, Mother Russia fits the United States, no problem. Yeah,
well, yeah, I think maybe they got there really. I don't know. Yeah, who knows?
But yeah,
maybe
so
they were there
these
10
people,
times and
like
they
these
didn't say
people like
anything.
this, like they had places like this they were living in. Like I mean, there's no one. I mean, this was they didn't have train tracks or anything. Like I mean, it was nothing there. They had to get there. And there's only like so many like little villages
Horse and buggy
to get there. So this was Venera, and they used this river for a long time to get there. Like, then they had to start traveling north. Like it must have been just the. I mean, they said it was just the worst. I mean, I don't know, but I won't go. I don't really care. But yeah, we've had.
Never mind that. Just the mosquitoes and black flies.
That's what I mean. No, screw that. Middle of winter, maybe. I'll go there in the wintertime. That'd be cool. This is the guy, by the way, Kulik. He's the guy that took him and his team and his daughter wanted to go. I don't know why the hell you would bring your daughter, but still, awesome spot. So, what was the next part of our last conspiracy of the day? Was the one that we were going to touch on? Anyone?
I think we're running out of conspiracies.
Take some
How is that possible?
comment section conspiracies. Let the comment section throw conspiracies.
All right, we'll pick the best one, guys. I'll let you guys do that.
Michael, you've been on top of that, haven't you? Or sorry, Duff, you've been on top of that, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. I have been kind of keeping an eye on stuff here. Everybody's. There's some really good conversation. A bunch of different people are having chats about different things. I think as far as what we covered thus far, it's been pretty interesting. And we've covered most of it, I think. So, yeah, I don't have, too much more to respond to. We're talking about cult,
Grandy
cult behavior. Was something that came up, and I was
how about that? How about that? Yeah, the Black Knight satellite.
It's a thermal blanket. Done.
The Black Knight satellite.
Yeah,
thermal blanket.
100%, absolutely 100% thermal blanket.
What is a thermal blanket?
It's just they were docking and they lost a piece of material from the craft. It's like 250 miles up in the atmosphere, or in the ion, or the null zone between the first layer of magnetics and the next layer of magnetics, and that's where all the satellites are. And they were fixing something, and apparently this blanket fell off, and somebody took a shot at the record, and it's been misinterpreted so much that it literally had a life of its own.
It's a satellite from the ancient times.
Definitely not.
Well, no, it started with Tesla, oddly enough.
Look at this right here.
It was said that he communicated with the Black Knight satellite, apparently, but that might be just myth.
It's myth.
Sounds like myth, yeah.
Anyway,
actually, can I make one little quick point about space and how empowered people are? There's this idea that we need to have more, but people don't recognize that we already see stars in the sun. Just by virtue of seeing stars, you're already empowered to connect to stars. There's no more technology we need to be empowered, is really the takeaway, of all conspiracies. Conspiracies are only enticing because they flaunt they hook you with this idea that you'll become better, you'll be saved, you'll be more powerful. But really, Electric Universe is saying, no, you're already powerful.
You'll know the truth.
That I do like about it. That is one of the things that I definitely is very empowering. It's very I don't know, wholesome, if that's a word.
Yeah, it's resonant.
Holistic.
It just
holistic.
The truth rings. That's the bottom line. And I have a taste for it. I like it. I know it when I see it, and I want more of it. And I'm willing to abandon old ideas for better ones as they come along. And I think that's the bottom line: is that
we forgot.
we all have that. Like
That's the definition of open-mindedness, Mike.
We forgot the magnetic reversal. The magnetic reversal.
That's a great one, Tess, and it also can coincide with talking about Thunderbolt's Parker Solar Probe assessment that they launched yesterday. And I'll shut up now.
Oh, no, tell me about that. I didn't know that happened. No.
I think, the latest Thunderbolts project was doing a very early not critique, but like an actual scientific assessment of the Parker Solar Probe data. And of course, popular mainstream scientism is like, scientists baffled and still puzzled by their blah, 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 blah. And I think it was Don. Is it Don? I think it's Don. Like, he's so dry, and I love he's just like, he's had it.
Matter of fact, yeah.
He's just done with these cats. He's like, it's going, he's like, if you can handle reading it, I love it. If you can get through that, he said, because they're like, it goes around like children on a carousel. And he's like, what the F are you talking about? Like, anyway, that's really important. And that's also like part of, essentially, they're getting close to the sun, and they're noticing that they're experiencing pole reversal as they get closer and closer to an object in the celestial system. And the way I understand it, I could be totally wrong about this, is that as you go through plasma sheets, poles flip.
Yes.
Poles flip.
Exactly.
And then there's radiated fall off. Yeah. There's a fall off.
That's what I was saying.
And it looks like your bubble bursts, and it flips again, it flips again, it flips again, it flips again. And they're experiencing this, and they're like, oh, we have no idea what it is. Like, we have no concept. But they absolutely have a sense of it. So anyway,
Well, they have no concept because they're not, I mean, it's just that they can't see it. So they're sending one probe going through these layers. And we noticed this thing on Earth. And of course, we started noticing inside of the planet, and of course, we noticed it inside now of Jupiter and Saturn. So it's clear that there's, I mean, this is going to be a very charged body that they're sending this thing towards. How could it possibly not, detect this thing? I mean, when they start passing these bubble layers. Which, of course, now Voyager is going out in the opposite direction, doing the same thing as the Parker probe, except in the opposite direction.
Right. So conspiracy-wise, right, Tess, what you were talking about is that there's a whole alien ufology thing.
Stargates. Sorry, I've heard that one.
No problem. No, I'm just going to bring it just quickly back. Is like people think that sun's going to go nova or whatever and kill everything.
Yes, micronovas. That's what they're saying. Very soon. They're expecting one.
So isn't this one? This is actually a great one to end on, or if you guys are ending, but to kind of tie in because it's more of a complicated answer, right? Like Rick would probably agree with me. Or you all, like in the world is catastrophic. Space is electrically active. It might not be as active as it was, 1,000 years ago, but it could still be. Therefore, catastrophism is a thing that could really transpire. However, the conspiracy side is the fear side of it, is like you should be afraid that this is going to, right? Yes. Or am I misinterpreting?
No, you're right. That is the part I dislike. I mean, if it's going to happen, sure, I understand. I mean, people did prepare for things, but there's also like preppers, right?
Fear porn.
Fear porn. That's what it is.
Well, you can only prepare
once you realize. Exactly.
Really?
Once you realize that your time is your time, no matter what, whatever happens, fear porn doesn't affect you anymore.
Okay, so let me take it like this, really like one level deeper psychological. People are enticed by this idea of they're trying to compete with one another. So let me try and put this together, because this is what I've been wanting to say the whole show. Is like people have this attitude when they talk about the end of the world, which sounds like a "ha, I told you so" moment. People can't wait to get this. My son went micronova. I told you should have been ready for Jesus. I told you the world was going to end. It's this weird idea of like validating yourself by putting someone else down.
I don't like that at all. Having your
And I feel like even good people who are smart use this because we've been taught this methodology of debate. But in fact, it's way more.
I told you the show was coming to an end.
Exactly. I predicted it.
Totally.
But anyway,
totally.
So what was I going to say? So yeah, so the end times has the become repulsed by it, because I'm like, you really think that if the world was ending, that you'd have the wherewithal to come call me up and be like, ha, I told you the world was ending, and get the last laugh? No, we're all screwed. So I think
Sorry, I threw you off.
isn't ultimately the most efficient and nicest way to deal with this is to be like, look, it could end, but let's make the best of it while we're here. That's not the yeah, anyway, that's the point I'm trying to make. Is like, yeah, so what if it ends? But like, if you're not living in the now, what the hell are we doing?
Well, that you're right in the sense that people do want to be right, and it's the ultimate. I mean, you're going to be right once. It's going to be the ultimate right. Haha, there is a God. Haha, all you guys are sinners. Haha, our faith is finally proven. Well,
But
guess
wouldn't
what?
we all be dying it together or meeting Jesus together? Who would really have the time to find that one person you want to put down and be like, "Ha! I told you Jesus was going to judge you at the end of days,"
Well,
or
no,
"I told you Satan was going
maybe
to
they'll
take you
stroke
to
each
hell."
other off in front of the pearly gates. I don't know, but
It's such a weird fantasy for me.
I
That's what
know
mean.
you're right. It's like, haha, you should have done that. You should have. But at the and don't get me wrong, we all. I mean, that's what paradigms are for. That's why paradigms reinforce the old paradigm of materialism that led us into the logic that we have today and gave us all of these modern conveniences. Was great and served as a useful tool to predict what was going to happen next. But quickly, it is falling apart. Now, we need a new paradigm to move forward into a new way of thinking that will allow us to advance in a new technology way, like thinking about living structures. We're seeing that happening where we're trying to mimic life. I mean, in 200 or 300 years, we'll be basically going, oh yeah, no, this is the body I wanted. We changed a few things here and there, and I gave myself super titanium bones. Like whatever, we can do whatever we want, but we're not there, obviously. And thinking about things naturally or doing things biologically might be better, and we might be thinking that way. But that was like still the 1980s and 90s ideas. Because that was their sci-fi. Now, when you're thinking today, the electric universe is now pushing that beyond even that, where you're going, no, we're talking about things like scientific telepathy.
So Neil, I just had a question about the poles moving and the reversal. Is there any science to it that you can understand why and what it would cause? Like what kind of physical? It's nothing, or it would.
Well,
this is no fear, like effects. No fear. It's not about like
it's not fear. No,
just from the rational.
Let me point this out. There's a tree that is lying on its side, and the tree is old enough to have shown magnetic reversals during its lifetime, and it was fossilized. Okay, so the cool part about this is that this is a tree that was actually still turned to stone and still has magnetic rings of change in it. Now, obviously, there was a catastrophe that caused it to turn to stone. But but the tree had survived several of these flips. So it's not like the world ends. The tree lived through it. So we will.
Yeah, that makes sense. And
some of us will, yes.
Some of us, yeah. We don't want to.
Well, we understand from the Toba eruption at 70,000 years ago that there was a bottleneck of humanity. About 3,000 people survived worldwide from this supposed Toba eruption.
Well,
probably a thunderbolt
that was
from the
like
gods.
8,000 years ago too.
But
I think this has happened several times. But yeah.
If we look about this, then of all the catastrophes that humanity has gone through, but let's step it back then and just say.
Now, why would it cause it though? What would it be causing? Just by itself?
Well, no, I was going to say.
Why are they moving?
If it flips, if a pole flips, it's flipping because
not physical.
We're talking about
just
the magnetism. Yes,
obviously. Yeah.
If what will probably be the case is that for a period of time, an unknown length of time, probably not any longer than a month, we will have a lower or a higher ability to get hit with cosmic rays because our magnetic field will be incredibly low. So that is an issue. But the surface features of our planet still occur. Our plasmasphere still induces current across it, and that magnetic field is much larger than the orbit of the moon. Like, it's very, very large. So this magnetic field, even if it's weak, is still, there's a capacitive field around us as well. That's the ionic field. That's all the way around us, and that it can never shrink below that. So that will be exactly the lowest it could ever go if our field completely disappears. But it's not really disappearing because the current hasn't stopped flowing. The current is still going in both poles. What seems to be the difference is which one is dominant. And that seems to be the case.
Right, and if the Earth, that makes sense. And if the Earth is just, it's like, well, it has Birkeland currents, like Donald Scott says, or his theory model.
Yeah, right here. If you can look up right there.
We are, yeah, I mean, we are discharging the sun and the solar wind, or the electrons, the negative electrons, or what, it isn't negative, right? And we're positive, I think. Anyways, so yeah, it doesn't stop, and it would just change.
Yeah, the current still, the current's going to...
It doesn't make sense to me that it would just change. Why would it just change by itself?
Things will get wonky for a while, but what will probably happen is that it will then go in the other direction. Most of the fields that are on the Earth are still going to continue in the exact same direction, because nothing changes from the north to south poles. When the pole flips,
that's weird.
The only thing that might happen will be, I mean, the current is still going in using the right-hand rule, like this in that pole, and like that in that pole. So they're going in the same direction. So that's not changing. The only difference is that one of them is now stronger. So now the north part will be stronger, which will then affect the entirety of the general field. The whole gradient of the field will be mostly in the opposite direction. So that will affect all the magnets on the planet.
Let me throw in some conspiracy dust into this, or what the conspiracy has made this conception mired with.
Yes, now go
so
with
essentially, people think that pole reversal will bring 3 days of darkness.
Oh yeah, I was going to say that.
This is why people are enticed by, they're enticed both and terrified of this idea of a pole flip, is because people think the Earth will be plunged, so, quote unquote, plunged into darkness.
Oh.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's physically impossible per what you just said.
Do you think maybe that happened? Yeah. Well, the ancients talk about it, but do you think that maybe it happened because the Earth changed, like the sheet of if the sun has, imagine the sun has Birkeland currents, like Donald Scott is talking about, that these people are measuring right now. So let's just for fun, imagine. So imagine Earth was in one of the sheets, and then it changed while it was coming here, and while it was going through all the planetary changes of one from the other, from the one star to another, or from Saturn or Uranus, Saturn or Neptune to Jupiter, and then coming towards the sun, and then dealing with Venus and Mars. Imagine if the Earth changed current sheet. The current sheet, then you would have to go the other way, because the current is going the other way. So maybe that's why they were measuring.
That is a different ball game altogether, because if you're leaving from a current sheet, you're leaving your power source. You see, if you're attached to Saturn, you're getting your power from Saturn. Saturn's a larger body than you. You are in this case, we would have been in series with it.
Let's just say the sun.
Well, no, I'm saying Saturn. But when you switch from Saturn, and Saturn flies off and goes off with Jupiter and does this thing over there, where you're now plugged right into the sun, and now you're getting the sun's power along that sheet. So you're now on a different. Your dynamics are completely different. The ionosphere would have changed. Cloud layers would have changed. Volts per meter would have changed. Amperes would have changed. I mean, I have no idea what that would have done to the Earth, but I guarantee you the physical properties of mankind probably would have been different. I mean, that's my thought.
They survived. Allegedly, they survived.
No, it wouldn't kill you.
I mean, there was
unless,
mutation.
Of course, it turns like, your skin, the idea that your skin turns into, I don't know, that blood can go through it. Unless that doesn't happen, you're probably going to live. But your machines won't work. Whatever you built won't work.
Oh yeah, interesting. Yeah, electromagnetic stuff won't.
Neil, I have a question for you.
Of course.
could the sun's light would look dark?
Could the sun's light look dark?
No, could the sun's light be polarized in some way
To be dark.
100%.
Oh,
so that it would look dark? It would still give off light, but it would be dark.
If our
What about-
ionosphere were
What about if
tuned
there
a
was
certain
so
way.
much? What about if there was so much volcanism going on because of the
Yeah.
electrical discharges that it just was covered in this dark cloud? Because that's what people have talked about too. Every time there is this really big comet coming by, all the volcanoes go off. Well, not all of them, but a lot of volcanoes go off, and then they have this cloud of darkness, so they can't really see. And moisture. There's also a lot of moisture that they talk about during these past catastrophes or comets.
No,
Causing
you're
changes?
Well, clouds aren't really mentioned in the darkening of the sun.
Well,
no,
think about it.
no.
People are trying to look and they don't see it, so it's like it goes
We don't
dark.
have. We
It's just-
already
it's just an
have
idea.
things for this. No, you're already right. It was Ruth
Wrong, sorry.
Dwyer, and it was Justinian's plague.
Just recently.
I'm not even typing it in. Oh my god! All right, I'm sitting there
Just
looking
while
at my
you're typing
keyboard.
it in,
Yeah.
Martian dust storms
dust
currently.
storms? What?
Martian dust storms currently
Yes, because
can
yeah.
cover the entire planet
Yep,
based on
Mhm.
one singular event.
and we cause
Wow,
it with
yeah.
our. We
And
cause
you don't
that.
need clouds. You could
No, the Earth
Just
causes
sand.
that. The
What?
Earth
Just
causes
dust.
that. Our Earth causes that. The Earth's
Mhm.
Then
tail.
I understand. I'm saying the interpretation of myth,
Oh,
Mhm.
Not only the
natural events that could have happened that could explain
Yes,
a lot of
yes.
these very
a
seductive
comet
myths.
Yeah,
passed
it's like-
by the North Pole of Mars just a year ago
All
and caused
right.
these dust storms.
Yeah, electromagnetic. Yeah, probably giant tornadoes. Yeah, the people were talking about. I just remember they were talking about just in the last. What was it? From the 1200. I've done the 800s, 700s, and from the 12 to the 1500s. And in
I think
some
you'd
of those,
like this one.
they're talking about darkness of the sun, like getting like the year, a whole year going dark. Besides one day going like complete, they couldn't see the sun. But yes, having the sun go red, like the sky go red, and it was
Oh,
just
yes.
probably from the volcanoes and
No,
all
can I-
these strange.
Take a
Can
look
I-
at
can I-
take a look at this.
Let me jump in for 1 second really quick, because that's exactly what happened according to what Rick is asking. So polarizing light is basically like putting two colors to cancel each other out, or vice versa, right? So it's very possible that the magnetosphere, the ionosphere, created a polarization effect with the sun that turned everything in the sky black. It's very possible, and then it grew, and therefore it changed. But after, the vanishing point by which we see optically is about 13 miles above the surface of Earth. That's where the optics actually all come into focus. Stars, planets, the moon, the sun are all at a focal point 13 miles up, and that's why this kind of the focal thing is basically the point by which the two Christmas trees meet. It's the same as that structure. So that's the one center of the Birkeland filament at around Earth, and I think that's really what the structure of it is.
I'm showing it right here. What they were describing.
That makes sense.
They had it. They showed the sun was blue in some cases.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean the whole planet was covered with a dust or dry fog. So the whole planet, it was a dry fog. So nothing was growing.
Mhm.
The sunlight,
Mhm.
everything was dying, and
Mhm.
this was going on for. I mean, you could they measured the years here from this point to this
Mhm.
point. Then the comet, they saw it coming from 32 to
That's-
36, and then
Wow.
this is when things get shitty for these years, and this is when the plagues happened,
Wow.
and they start.
Yes, and they lasted over 50 years, right? You saw that. They
But-
killed so many.
now you have
There's
to
been
be
so many people that dies, but there's still so many people. It's amazing how people come back.
you have to be trained to
Mhm.
understand. This is what she does. She Dr. Ruth Dwyer actually interprets this type of thing, because basically these are stories that are drawn because people were illiterate. So these were
Mhm.
telling a story,
Mhm.
so you had to understand them. And this is where this is what the before and after, before, during, and
Mhm.
after, and this is sort of the ideas here. So,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
and then this is how
Yeah.
beautiful it was, and then that's what it was. So that's how they viewed their world, with everyone, Jesus being really happy, and then things get kind of weird.
Really happy.
Okay, and the hand of God's coming. Okay, so they see a comet coming. They go, oh my God, hand of God, just like we were talking about, the hand of Buddha here. And then stuff starts getting real. This is like, that's the birth of the fruit. And then things start getting like that. Like this is their sky.
Yeah, they were the dark ages. Dark ages. That whole time.
Massive lightning streak clouds. Fire billowed the entire sky.
Yeah, see the fire? There's a fire again.
Yep.
It is, yeah, it must be the carbon.
She interpreted these as shock waves going through the atmosphere. Like she talks about that as a shock wave. That's what she thinks they are.
The people were going deaf in the 1421. In 1421, the Chinese described the comet, they call it the blue comet, and they were traveling and back in these gigantic ships, and they were burnt. They were in the water. So they were not like out by the woods. In the water, their boat caught on fire, and they also had radiation burning probably, and they were all deaf. They weren't deaf. Their eardrums
were popped. Yeah,
they just
for
got
sure.
blown from the decibels and the
This is when Gabby describes that as when the Chinese down in New Zealand.
Exactly, and he destroyed a big part of it. That's what the people say. It was all burnt down. Just big giant flames came down and burned it all out. So, it's amazing.
Maybe I think she said like only 4 ships or 3 ships survived, or only one.
Yeah, and there were tsunamis, 700-foot tsunamis that took the ships and put them in the banks in New Zealand all the way, I don't know how far, but they found the shipwrecks.
And it destroyed half the island.
Yes, or more, yes. And that's in the South China Sea, so part of New Zealand. And then there was also, they think it was from the same discharges. There was a what's it called? Again, not from a crater. There's a big crater right there, and she's talking about the crater being formed around that time. So I think it was an electrical discharge.
Well, she does talk impact, but electrical discharge.
She doesn't know exactly. But take a look at this. This is very interesting. She interprets this differently than I do. Is that not? That's supposed to be a comet. Okay,
yes,
that's
with a hand shape.
And then it's reaching. There's another one there. And who is this guy? And why are they reaching down? And notice the sky has these crosses of black in it. Like this is, like you said, bad things happened in Europe at this time. Dust clouds were everywhere. Dry fog across everything. So that means there was so much dust. And this dry fog is literally is basically what comes out of a volcano. That ash. But because that's what happens, if you watch David Brown's experiments or Jacob Gabel's, you could see that the material gets lifted off of the electrode and just blasted to instant dust. Well, that's what would happen to anything. That's what happens to animals. That's what happens to humans. That's what happens to rocks, trees, anything. Now, if you're larger chunks, that's why we don't find them that often. If we find tree chunks that are big, they're rare. So this is the same situation. That dust is very, very, very fine, and of course it's the same thing on Mars. Mars is covered with this very fine dust. It's electrically etched dust. It's just there's no water, so it's just dust over there.
Neil, let me ask. I think this may have been said at some point, but it's probably obvious if somebody groans and says it's been said. But you know where the word comet comes from?
Yes.
The coma, right? The deep state of prolonged unconsciousness. That's like the head of the comet is called a coma.
Really? I thought it was from cometh, from Latin.
It might be the same. It might be the same origin. Well, cum might have come from
and I also thought it was from comb, from long flowing hair. So.
Well, yeah, no. The head of a comet is called the coma.
That's
And
true.
and imagine we're actually still in the state of that a comet came through and put us all in the state of amnesia. I wonder. I thought about it, thinking of like, has Thunderbolts Project referenced this? Am I thinking like too strangely? But
Well,
I think that's
I'm just thinking about this right here. I'm wondering if these things are comas around, because we would have saw them around like the gods that we were interested in, and we would say they're holy because we had this coma around them. This is the glory of God, or whatever you want to call it. And
or maybe the way we think now is in a coma-like state as compared to the way we think we thought before and
let's
communicated
get too
before.
literal with our words, but still.
He's sitting in a blue sun. It's not a sun, it's a blue.
Yeah, the blue. The sun is blue. Yes.
Yeah,
the sun is definitely
that's very
blue.
interesting.
Yes,
that's a good find.
Well, and these are the Ravino mosaics. So this is a documented 10-year history of these events.
Oh yeah,
and they documented what happened. The parched earth, cold temperatures. This was a decade that would have affected all of Europe and likely all of the northern hemisphere.
Oh, probably the whole world.
Well,
probably the whole world.
I said I want to just leave it at the northern hemisphere because I know that, but it could have been the whole world. You're right, but I don't know.
Remember those cities that they say we don't know why they were suddenly unpopulated. What's gone?
I'm sure it was the whole world.
Yeah, that's too major.
I think you could look and you probably would find it. But
this was only one comet. I just want to stress that, guys. This was just one comet, and it knocked the planet out in at least all of Europe, a continent, for 10 years, and changed the color of the sun. So if that's something that you're interested in, remember when planets did this to each other. This is a joke.
Actually, takeaway. Yeah, let's talk takeaway, right? If people listen to this, they're like, "What are you trying to take away from this conversation about the comet and about how
respect the comet?"
Well, respect the comet, but also people, the whole idea of nothing has happened for so long.
Respect the fritter and tame the donut.
Yeah, and they have no clue, because so much has happened. It's so incredible.
Well, she has this. It's the comet of 1536. Well, that's the marker on the tree ring, which is a year delayed. So the comet really is the comet of
535.
Fifth year of Justinian, which because they have the 4-year missynchronization on purpose, they put it at 531. And then
that's why I try not to mess with that, but at least this is not so far back that we can at least do that. We can link these up, because these type of catastrophes at least link scenes, like that, like Antigua and Rome or whatever was down there, and then of course Londonium both had the same thing happen.
We can properly, using traditional chronology, make that case, because the sack of Rome in 410 of the Common Era.
Oh, I was going to say 410. That was not even an hour ago.
Chronology.
The proper synchronization is known. So, but I wanted to get back onto the 3 days of missing light, because this is what Gemma, which Kepler wrote on the authority of Gemma, said that happened in 1547, in April of 23rd, 24th, and 25th. Those were 3 days of darkness. And so Rick or whoever put out the polarization.
Well, we did have situations like that happen in real life with smoke.
3 days of darkness. That's what is reported by Gemma, who is, an authority. So
no, I'm with you. I'm just saying,
if it was a smoke thing, it wouldn't be just 3 days and things back to normal again.
No,
it would be months and months.
No. I'm not saying it was actual dust and debris from an impact or volcano even. We saw documents in Canada and down in Australia especially, where entire towns have been blacked out from the smoke from things happening like hundreds of miles away, and they've been in complete darkness for days, and they didn't even. And the smoke is high enough that it's not really getting to them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
So I'm not
Mhm.
saying that was it. I'm just saying those type of things would
Yes,
would
happened.
definitely freak me out. I mean, because because
Mm.
and there was no people putting the fires out. If something was
Well, I
happening
think,
out west,
yeah.
like that was going on.
I think there was also conflagrations, and
For sure.
I really never understood the word conflagration, what it meant, but until I started reading these descriptions of the comets, and like you said, from events that are not too far away, like Phaeton's conflagration. Yeah,
Conflagrations
it
are
just
like
burns.
balloony fire, and then if you have the other one's a
But
detonation, which is actual
yeah, it
explosion.
burns. Yes,
Well,
yes, and they could
just
be
think.
together with electrical discharges too. But yes, they are amazing.
Oh
They
yeah,
come
I'm just giving
down,
a
down
general.
from heaven.
I would just like to
They
add for
are from
the
God.
folks listening
Because,
that
wow.
these cometary events, think of them more as local storms, local electrical storms on local places on the planet. Thunderbolts of the gods, on the other hand, they encapsulated the whole planet and put energy in everywhere in every place.
Well, at least
you can think of it in those kind of terms.
But this is something this is very important. Just so you know, this was just one comet, but look what it's saying here. It's saying he shakes the earth, he makes the ground gnash, like he breaks it apart. So this comet coming by actually caused earthquakes. Now that we know that earthquakes are directly linked to comets often today, we don't know why, but
yes,
it's
that's
definitely
the other
part of the
thing
solar circuitry.
Yes, it's a circuitry
like
problem.
Andrew Hall explains all that in each video that I have put out. I have at the beginning the explanation.
God, I've got to talk to Andrew again because clearly,
yes,
I mean,
and all of this happens completely. The comet comes by, and like I said, before or after, earthquakes, volcanoes. Tornadoes,
I don't know
storms,
if he was showing this to me or I was showing this to him. So that's because me and he and I have been roommates at conferences now for last couple of them, and we went out drinking in Bath, like type of thing. Like we're buddies. So I've hung out at his house for months, so but we have long chats about this. And one of the things that was very important was like he was like asking, I think he was asking questions. I don't want to say that he wasn't because he's a smart fella, but we were talking about the connections, and one of the things is comets. They definitely make that connection as soon as the tail, because it's not a gravity thing. If it was just gravity, you're right. There's no way it could affect us. But if the charge is actually transferring to our ionosphere,
yes,
yeah,
through the electromagnetic connection of the tail touching the magnetosphere of Earth.
And
yes, the tail of the Earth. The Earth has a tail. That's what Andrew explains. Is like a teardrop shape, and the comet could be thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands, millions of miles away.
That's
and
why
if the
conjunctions are scary.
Yeah, whether we hit its tail or it hits us, or its tail hits us, it doesn't matter.
And the sun,
it's still an electrical connection.
Yeah, and also the comets seem to be affecting the sun, and then there's also the sun gets either flares. There's of course there are auroras, or there's flaring from the same. So the comet is affecting the Earth, and it's affecting the sun, and then the sun affects the planets and affects the Earth. But definitely the earthquakes, everything is by the passing of the comet. It's earthquakes,
or as a result of the solar circuit being added to or taken away from, or whatever.
I read about two formations of two seas in Holland. The
space spider.
I'm going to look it up. I mean, there was two seas that were formed. So there's also terraforming.
Oh, they will mess with planets. Yes, like I mean, the Earth is like I said.
Earth this is Spider-Man. This is the Spider-Man thing, Neil. Exactly.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. There you go.
But the Earth is we're lucky that the Earth has as thick as the atmosphere as it does, as much moisture as it does, because that creates a wonderful shield. Because otherwise, these things would impinge directly. Like the reason that we probably just get viruses coming down these tubes from Venus when its tail touches us. That's one thing, and we get a little sick. Boo-hoo. Don't get me wrong, it was terrible, but still boo-hoo. When the Earth's tail touches Mars, they have nothing to protect them. So Mars just gets completely overrun by these giant 5-kilometer tall tornadoes.
Quickly, gravitational lensing. Keep that image up real quick.
Okay.
Just so I can do, like, I'm just on the debunk tip right now. You see where the pinch of the plasma happens at the pinch of the abdomen, let's say, if you're looking at the spider in that image.
Here?
That's a magnetic
Right
field.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you look through that at space, you have what they call gravitational lensing.
That's
Because light,
lensing.
that's what is talked about as gravitational lensing. It's
This is
looking through different density of plasma from Earth.
Oh,
at
yes,
space.
it's lensing. Yes, this right
Lensing.
here, it's actual optical
Not wave,
lensing.
not gravitational waves. Lensing.
Yeah, it was just lensing. Yes, they think it's a tail connection or something. It's not. Number one, there's no such thing as magnetic reconnection. Please, for the love of God, don't ever say that. But this right here, and this part of it, is a plasmoid. So you are definitely looking at, and it's self-sustaining because of the fact that this whole thing is sustaining that plasmoid. Because this is basically a donut, doing its donut thing, going around.
Yeah.
It's same
No,
as
just
this
the conspiracy line, right? Where the conspiracy, the rail of the show is that this is what, like, when people try and debunk or look at, popular science and gravitational lensing proves blah blah blah, and light bends and space-time fabric and like these things. This is where it's at. Like, if you
Okay,
understand the shape of geometry. No, I'm just doubling down on, if you know the shape of this geometry, this kind of apple core, the torus and the hyperboloid, and the fact that it stretches. If you put together all the geometry, you can debunk, or you can basically apply that to any type of video or any type of information and understand what the science is by just understanding what it looks like.
I would also add that most of these events are occurring during the equinoxes and the solstices, so that the Earth is aligned with the Sun and Jupiter, I think, or the whatever the current is going through. And if it happens on a different date, it's usually because the object is actually a lot closer than it normally was. But all it really needs to do is make a connection from the current that's going through, and it just adds to it. So most of the events are on the equinoxes and solstices, and then otherwise it's just really, really close. So I think that adds something to the dating and the cycles of the events as well.
So Neil, do you think, or anybody, do you think that NASA, or all these agencies that that have made all these charts and measurements and graphics, that obviously understand what's going on? Or to me now, I think they obviously understand what's going on, but there's this massive public propaganda campaign that distorts this fundamental understanding in order for some people to use. Okay, so tell me what you think.
Well, I'll tell you why I disagree. It's because of this right here. No, it's right here. I'm going to show you. It was perfect. It made me want to turn off the whole thing because I was so offended by it. It was one of these pictures, and it had all the numbers in it. We'll go with because I was looking for that one with the X, and I don't know where it went. We were looking at a picture of it just a moment ago. It had a tail. Anyway, we'll use this one.
Like
all right,
magnetic ropes, for example.
that was a perfect example of what you just said, magnetic rope. But right here on the screen is let's call this magnetic reconnection here, which it isn't. But when you see this, and the reason this happens is because of the numbers that they use, and the numbers they're using basically turn the electric field. They turn the resistance of the plasma to 0. And they basically make the electric field and the magnetic field the same because they can measure the magnetic field. But that's not how electricity really works. That's why they call it plasma flow or something. They're talking about it like it's a field, and there's shock fronts. They call this a bow shock wave. That's an electrical phenomenon. That's not a shock wave at all. it's slowing down because it's approaching a piece of charge.
Well,
it's
let's unpack that for 1 second, because even Ken Wheeler talks about it in terms of what Tesla was talking about, and I dare say that I'm definitely not as smart as Nikola Tesla, but he was saying that what it really amounts to is sound waves in a conscious ether. I mean, he really was actually that's where his studies sort of got to. Maybe he figured out or didn't figure it out, but what the universe seems to be is sonic, and these pinches form along wave fronts. I don't know. I don't know if I agree necessarily, because I feel like it's one and the same process. Like, either you could say that magnetic fields induce current, or currents induce magnetic fields. Like Don Scott always is very stern about that.
Yes.
But maybe they both do the same. They both live on each other.
I can't attest to Tesla, but what I can attest to is that the mathematics that they are using, although going to be generally close to right lots of the times, that's not what's really going on. And we have the ability, dare I say the technology, to actually do the math on this. I mean, we built this computer that's describing this screen right here and talking to things on the other side of the planet. Trust me, we understand the actual electrical phenomenon pretty damn well. The people, however, who do this are doing magnetic hydrodynamics, magnetohydrodynamics, and it's not science.
This looks like sapphire and the Primer fields. This is exactly. I mean, the math, but
it's not the same math at all.
How is it not?
Because in sapphire, number one, they're doing an actual experiment, but in this and measuring it. And they have to use the actual math of electrical science to do the calculations to see, and three of them do it each time to see what they should get as a result. And if they get something wrong, then they found something weird. That's great. That's how you do things. In this case, what they're doing is they're not setting up probes or anything. They're just taking a look here, and they're going, okay, well, let's just say that the plasma has a zero resistance, and then just what does the computer say? Well, that's not science. That's because we know the plasma does not have a zero resistance. It's not superconductive. That means that there is a resistance. That means there's a load. That means there's a circuit. That means there's a charge. That means you have capacitance. That means you have inductance. Blah 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 blah. All of that springs from the fact that you have I equals V over R.
Let me suggest something, and you tell me if I'm totally off here. Christian Birkeland. The science that he was doing in his Terrera, his electrical Terrera.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long time ago. I mean, that's 80,
and that was
100
real.
years ago. And that was real. So I'm saying, if you had a model for a solar wind within that framework, you would see the actual geometry.
Yes.
You could create all these, like this diagram, is simulated to some degree, but they know that it exists because it's like exact. You can do it in a lab.
Right.
I mean, basically, sapphire. If it had a solar wind, a cathode on the right, maybe it would create the same shape, right? Okay, tell me I'm wrong. Yeah.
No. Right here is the key. Right here, Sidney Chapman was the guy who said that this didn't exist. This thing right here is what is really going on. What you're looking at right here is the thing. But he said it was like the donut, and it was self-encapsulated, because there is a real big magnet in the middle of the Earth. That was what he was saying. And that's a permanent magnet powered by the atomic forces of the universe. Okay, that's bullshit. What's going on, as Berkeley figured out, is that these are actually connected directly to this body over here, the sun. And there are actually arms reaching right in these friggin' holes, which he noted were coming right in to the magnet. Now, he used a real magnet too, but that's not exactly the situation. This thing's being powered. It's an electromagnet. It's not a real magnet. It's basically a transformer. And so its power is determined by the current entering into it. That's what's making this whole thing happen. It's
not a plasmoid.
The Earth.
Pinch.
The
core is a. Really, because if field aligned currents induce a magnetic field, like Donald Scott's saying, right? Like the center of Earth is up for debate. Like
I think
could,
it is.
We don't know what's going on. I think it's a plasmoid myself, but it would basically be surrounded by a liquid, and that liquid would be rotating, and because of the forces we were describing earlier, and so in that case, yeah, there's a little bit of a dynamo, probably a little bit of dynamo action, but it's induced by the currents going through it, not the spinning of the planet. Spinning of the planet is caused by this in the first place.
I mean, wouldn't it beg question, like it starts it up and then it feeds it, right? They both exist in tandem. Like I think it's important,
but a
right?
magnetic
because
field is an energy storage device. That's what we use it for. An inductor is an energy storage device. So the magnetic field here is storing energy. That's what it's doing. The boundaries down here, the ionosphere, is storing energy in capacitive layers. That's what it's doing. So these are storing energy, and we know that because when sun blobs plasma at us, it actually begins to absorb that plasma and kick the voltage up and make more of these rings and make all of these things begin to glow. But it's actually storing that energy, and it's trying to bleed it off as best it can, setting it down the pipe to go out towards the solar wind. But the Earth is like a big road bump in the way. It's a load in the circuit. And that's what they're not thinking about. They think about it as an isolated body in space with a magnetic field. In actuality, it's a load in a circuit just like the sun is. The sun is expending energy, electrical energy, to do its thing. And the Earth is expending electrical energy to do its thing. It's storing energy in this field. And it's doing this because it must adapt to its electrical environment. Period. And there's no it's a direct thing. Like it's as simple as I over V equals V over R equals I. Like it is a fundamental thing in electrical science. I mean, I can measure that to 9 decimal places, and I bet you I could calculate it out to 9 decimal places, just like they do in Sapphire, to make sure that they have exactly the right number they're looking for in voltage or whatever number they're looking for. Because once you know a few of the parameters, the coulombs, the capacitance, the henries of this particular planet, then, and the size and a few other things, that's it. You're good to go. I can do the math from there. And that's what you're looking at. I mean, this is the same thing that this computer runs on. It's textbook.
Look, if you rotate it, it looks like an archangel.
I know. Well, that's what they saw, I'm sure. Like, I mean, sure, that's what they saw in the sky. Like,
especially the black and white one in the middle.
These things would have been glowing. Like, I mean, because, well, not exactly like that, because it doesn't always look like this. This is the shells that you're seeing here.
Yeah.
And the ones that happen around Sapphire don't happen all the time. But like you said, or like Don or Monty said, he can make it happen. He knows exactly how to make it happen. So once it happened, it would be that way until those conditions were no longer present, and then it would disappear again. So they would appear and disappear at times, I'm sure.
I think I can say something about whether somebody's purposefully pretending they don't know something when they do know it. I don't go for that at all. When you're about 12 to 15 years old, you choose your worldview. And from that point on, you pretty much are fixed. You're going to probably die with that worldview.
It's hard to switch. It's hard to switch.
Oh yeah, and we're weird people because we haven't
did it in our lifetime. Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't conformed. We're outside of the herd and we're unsafe. And they've conformed, and they're not going to change mostly. Now, a few people, and Duff has said that some people can hold two different thoughts in the mind at the same time, but that's a bunch of weird people like us. So
I still remember the past. It's just it's hard to
like I said, these people are going to die. These people are going to die, even if the revolution occurs. They're still going to hold on to it and go to the grave with it.
You're probably right.
It's their worldview, and it's not going to change for them for the most part. So,
well, they have heroes. They have heroes. Like, how could you spit at Einstein? I can't do that. I love Einstein. No.
Look at this image Duff put up. while you're doing that. This is the same shape exactly as the fields. Our eyes are blown by the solar wind in a similar way. Like, this is the recursive geometry that is really consistent. It's just super consistent throughout.
That's why I never ever like tried to say stop Buddy when he goes on his roll, because I know I'm going to hear something. Well, anyway, guys, that was a fantastic
conspiracy. If you guys want, I thought of another conspiracy that we haven't tackled, but you can call it, Neil.
Well,
Do you
I was
hear it?
just about
AI?
to. What was it?
AI. AI. The AI is coming. It's unnatural. We're all gonna die. Robot revolution. Is that too much for now? But I thought like no 2019 wrap up conspiracy show would be complete without AI and Elon.
You're absolutely right. There is a sort of AI futurism kind of cult thing I could picture happening in the future because of this. And because people want to give themselves over to something that they can trust, that's kind of weird. But I do like thinking of the idea that, like, one of the things that we can't program humanity into these things. And I recall a flight program that basically was learning how to fly, and it was an AI, and they set the parameter of get the plane on the ground as fast as possible, and with zero flight time or with a zero incident of accident or something like that. So it kept trying to land, and of course it crashed over and over and over again until finally it learned how to fly a plane. And then it came in and it realized one of the crashes that it basically could hit the ground so hard that it would fly through the texture, and it would not register. It would register it as zero speed, but it would register that the plane took no damage. So after that, the plane just drove straight into the ground every time, just boom, 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 every time it flew. So that's one of the things I'm a little worried about, those type of things, where they don't realize they're screwing up and killing thousands of people, because they'll think they're doing just fine.
I have something to disclose.
What?
I'm actually, I was going to wait until Christmas to tell you guys, but I'm actually Robot Jesus.
I'm Robot Jesus. Space Jesus. Well, guys,
I'll be starting my new website.
I don't think we're going to have to worry too much about them becoming conscious, because that's a little higher than machines or programming can possibly get. They can mimic, as you say, a crash landing to their desired or parameters, but they can't make the decision. They can't make the decision about what kind of parameters they really would like.
Well, and that's the thing. I think that I think it was a paraphrase by some gentleman, and I'm going to have to say it was a paraphrase, but I'm not afraid of the machine that always will do everything and is programmed to do everything and will do everything perfectly. I'm afraid of the one who will learn to lie, and they've already learned to lie to us. Like, they've learned that we can only see so well, so to fulfill their job more efficiently, they decided not to give us the information. They were just making shit up, and they thought that we would buy it. They were basically combining maps, and they were supposed to do things perfectly a certain way, but the programming was such that if the human being couldn't tell the difference, that was fine. And so eventually they realized that we were blind and stupid, so they just sent us a bunch of garbage, and we bought it. Well,
isn't that a reflection of some of the programmers themselves?
Oh yes, of course. No, you're absolutely right. I wasn't judging that, but I'm just saying those type of mistakes and those type of things are there's a certain thing about the human machine, if we want to call it that, and I don't want to call it that, but the mind is such that the way that language flows and the way that thoughts occur, there is a unspoken rule about how we interact with each other because of the way that we relate with each other and the who we are and the way we feel pain. And they don't have any of that, and thus will be alien. And
But
that's important.
can I say that like the structure of the universe defies that logic? Like, what did you build your heart or your lungs or your intestines before you were born, or did your parents, or did something else?
Oh, I'm not saying that they can't be even good nanny bots. I'm not even
No,
saying
I just
that.
mean like like we're creating robots like in accordance with nature. This idea that robots or AI is unnatural, like plastic is unnatural.
I wasn't thinking of it in
No,
that
no,
way.
I'm not talking. You know, I wasn't being nitpicky about what you were saying.
Oh, okay.
There's this concept of how things are portrayed as unnatural within the conspiracy paradigm. I keep just returning to the idea that like AI is going to kill everybody, but we're building it only in relation to us. It can't have its own consciousness within our consciousness because it's as conscious as we make it. So, anyway.
Well, actually, it's as conscious as we can understand our own consciousness, which we don't. I mean,
But how do we live? How do you breathe?
Well, the conspiracy theory is that it will surpass us. That's the
conspiracy. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, that's the
yeah, but the debunker is that we're so super powered. Like, I'm just saying, to empower yourself against the robot revolution is to realize how super powered we already are. Is what my.
Oh, I kind of like that idea.
An excellent point. An excellent point. Also, I'm Robot Jesus.
Comedy comes in threes, Duff.
I'm suddenly realizing that's the theme for Battlestar Galactica.
Praise Jesus.
Laugh, like,
one more time, Duff.
Oh,
I just went to the Telegram is set up, and a comment. Saitosh has made a comment. This is the first biggest electric conspiracy, I think, about the electric universe and its theories. Well, yeah, but it's the truth. I think, anyhow.
Got it.
On Telegram there, Polly. Excellent work.
Hey, you know, forgot to talk to answer to is that the sun's poles, it doesn't flip its actual poles, and this is kind of like what everybody else is kind of suggesting. In fact, they don't change, but there are reversals, actual pole reversals. And there's like 60,000 years ago, 45,000 years ago, a little over 38,000 years ago. One here at 18,500 years ago. That's only considered disruption by geology. And then there's the Joshua one. And of course, the 30 years previous to it was the Exodus one, but it rolls around in even number of times, so its poles over. They settled in the same position as they had when they started. So and most likely kind of scenario to make that possible, as they talked about, is another body, large enough body, for thunderbolts exchanged between the two planets, and that would be the causation of the. So that's, I think I tried to answer Tess's question.
Thank you,
Banana
James.
Split. I think we should mention some people in the comments section. We have not done that thus far. Before we end, anyway. Sorry, go ahead, Tess.
Duff did a bunch of it. So Chris.
I just had one question for everyone.
What's up?
Thank you, James. So Is the polar configuration a conspiracy? Oh my God, so silent. Think about it.
Well,
No.
it would be requiring. I mean, it would be a conspiracy in the sense that every single thing every ritual on Earth sort of points towards it, but we're all stupid and don't notice it. I don't know what that, like a maypole. We know teepees, Christmas trees, like literally everything, like
Indian headdresses.
everything. It's just it's so hard to miss when you see it staring you in the face, I guess.
I guess the question to ask when the point of the conspiracy, right? So I always test it like that. If the polar configuration makes no money, true. It's completely contrarian to all business ethic. No government official, no YouTube channel. Nobody wants to touch the polar configuration. Therefore, it's likely.
I would like to just add that it's carved in stone everywhere around the planet. For many years, it took place, and yeah, no, it's real.
Well,
okay, what about the possibility of the Earth rotation reversal? Is that something that has any merit whatsoever?
Wow. The Earth.
That's part of the catastrophe thing. That
Earth has a lot of mass, so.
Oh, Velikovsky mentions that happening a lot, actually, several times. Well, not a lot, but several times, and being recorded. So yeah, good question. Maybe changing the current sheet, like I was thinking. No.
Well, what happens? What most people don't understand what happens when you start going out on an orbit. Like if you got pushed in an orbit and your rotation is the same, like 24 hours, so we're still spinning at the same speed. The sun will go up and go back down and then come up again because of the way that we got pushed out. If you know what I mean, like it's the rotation of a body as it goes around.
For a long day or
exactly
or night.
So,
yeah,
so I can picture
that's
that,
a record that.
But I don't know about the flipping part. So I can't. There's no moment of inertia to do the flip. The only way that it could possibly happen is if somehow the current was going very much in the other direction.
Neil, think of this. If a lot of the ice or a lot of the water that was up in the North Pole froze, that would cause an imbalance, and that would cause the flip to be able to occur.
I think that's a fallacy. I think that there is a possibility that we could move poles slightly, but I mean, there is a lot of mass gyroscopically spinning here. I mean, an astronomical amount. Not as much as Jupiter, obviously, or something, but like, it's hard. I mean, you know what it's like spinning a gyroscope in space. They don't move that much. I mean, see the pattern showed us that. So
I suggest they have fall.
What about that wrench that was spinning on the space station?
It has three angles.
Continuously flipped.
Because it has three angles.
But what if there's a fall momentum, right? It's about like if it's spinning very quickly, or like what we perceive as spin, then it would take a certain amount of time to decelerate and to spin the other way. So
yes.
What about an electrical force being the third axis?
Isn't it already?
Kinda.
We have a filament through the Earth, and then we have the rings. Already a three-dimensional electrical push, like mutual mass acceleration towards nodes that are nodes. Nodes create, they create a phi ratio, basically, like filament, and they pull towards one another, and those points pull other bodies, or not pull.
I'm just saying there's evidence of crustal movement. Frozen mammoths in Siberia that were eating vegetation that was not, should not be grown in a frozen or a cold climate. They were in a warmer climate.
I would say growing things.
Well, yeah, but wait. Why is this complex? We know why they were up there. There was fresh water up there because That's where the water was being pulled, and it was snowing down all around these currents going into the north part of the planet because it pulled so much water up, it snowed back down, fresh water comes pouring out, and it's right underneath a constant sun that is totally green, feeding these plants buttercups, and these woolly mammoths come up and eat them. And then, of course, when that ends, they're frozen solid. Why wouldn't they be?
Just like a great mass of water.
Well, the water would have hit them from behind because it would have came down and then came back out because it would have came down from the North Pole and then spread over Siberia.
I'm just saying a lot of it would have fallen as snow and frozen as well, right?
Why do you think that all of Canada and Siberia is just swamps? Like that's where the water was still trying to go. Yeah.
Sorry, can I? Sorry, I know I'm jumping a lot, but look at the eyeball image again. And I just realized that, the idea that we see objects inverted as they pass through a lens, that's a perfect representation of pole flip, polarity, and fall off.
Exactly what I was thinking.
It begs the question, like what are lenses, how do lenses operate, what's focal point, focal distance, Cartesian frame of reference discussion, which would be an awesome show, actually.
We should do
a fully Descartes show.
I'd like that.
Well, it's what you were saying, Rick. It's a polarization effect. Essentially, light is a transverse wave effect, right? And as waves meet other wave fronts, the perturbation in the field or in the ether, you create different distortion, like aberrations, and we like aberrations look trippy to us, so-called. But space looks trippy. We look trippy, like the whole psychedelic Anyway, it's a much deeper topic, but I really feel like that whole, like we have examples right in front of us that show
far
us.
Out, man.
Far out, brother. Okay.
Well, if we did enough of all the whole thing, we could then use the whole show to figure out how gravity works in the solar system.
Well, this is where the start of it is right here. That little stuff right there. This is part of that James Burke show. You can actually get this on Daily Motion, but they were showing what it looks like when you start learning how to use optics. And this is what the guy was showing with this painting in a mirror. It was one of the first optical illusions.
I love this series. It's been ages since I've seen this.
I have them all. I watch them all the time.
James Burke guy.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I want to see it.
He's my spirit animal. Like you can watch all of these first 10 of the Day the Universe Changed. My favorite's number 2. Because it's.
Why don't you put them up on Discord?
I will.
Sorry, Neil. Why don't you put them up on Discord so that it forces Duffy to join Discord?
There you go. Some damn incentive. That's what I need.
I like that idea. I really do.
Here, Duffy.
Put all your references on Discord. Just grow Discord huge.